Defense didn't like that very much.
I guess he didn't want, I don't know.
It's that whole chain of command thing.
What are you going to do today on Balance of Power?
Well, we got Max Baucus on, former ambassador to China, as well as former senator, to talk about those Hong Kong elections, which are pretty extraordinary, apart from the intellectual property issues. And then we have another former senator, Jim DeMint. Remember Jim DeMint?
Yes.
He's got a big book on conservatism, what to keep and what to throw away.
What does he say about Carolina conservatism? He lived it.
Well, it's interesting. He thinks that conservatism has almost gotten a bad name, that people use the word conservative almost willy-nilly, that in fact he wants to really redefine it and make it more narrow, but also more friendly, not so hostile. Yeah,
interesting. Jim DeMint, very thoughtful always within the conservative wars of a number of years ago. It is David Weston. See it on Bloomberg Television. Hear it on Bloomberg. Did I get that right?
I think you did,
See it on television.
Right.
Hear it on radio, simulcast, 12 noon. Mr. Weston will do that Balance of Power today, and that will be most interesting as well. Merger Monday, we're back. We're back. It's November. It's into the holidays as well, and I would suggest maybe there'll be Merger Tuesday.
I think we're going to have a very active end of the year. If today's any indication, as you mentioned earlier, Tom, we've got extraordinarily low interest rates. We've got high stock prices. So those are the currencies that these boards and these CEOs can use to go out and bag the big game that maybe they're looking for. It's all about confidence, and so maybe we're seeing a little bit more confidence.
No, it's not. It's about getting tickets to Frozen 2. I got to save the marriage. I got to try to get tickets to Frozen.
You didn't go opening?
No,
Thursday
I tried to
night?
go. I said no.
Midnight showing.
Afterthoughts going. We can go to a midnight show.
Bob Iger's upstairs.
Yeah,
and you can go visit him. He can get you tickets to rehearsal. He can get you tickets. Bob Iger can get you tickets.
I'm large enough
He's
for
in a meeting upstairs. I just talked to him. Yeah, so you can get that.
Okay, that's good. Weston and Iger saying get tickets. That's pretty good. Shh, don't tell. I don't want to. Wait till the crowds go away.
Yeah.
127.37 million.
I think the highest grossing animated film for the Walt Disney Company.
Do we have a review, Mr. Weston? Did you see it?
No, I went to Ford versus Ferrari. And I loved every second of it. Every second of it.
That's a Detroit guy.
Yeah, exactly right.
Very good. Well, we'll see. We'll do Frozen 2 here in the coming weeks. We must say an interesting day with the Dow up 113, 27,989 on the Dow. The VIX comes in. This is important. 12.09 at VIX. Maybe we get an 11 handle here with the enthusiasm of the day. As John Farrow said ages ago, today looks a little bit like a sigh of relief on trade. Time will tell. We are produced by people that have seen Frozen 2. Richard Truman has seen it. And Colin the Twin saw it 3 times this weekend. 3 times. Once at IMAX. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties. The season to be jolly. Try our Party Time Indian snack selection for only $2.99. And our Party Time mac and cheese bites for just $1.19. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always little on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
What we see more bonds, more
more yield. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Monday morning from New York City to our worldwide audience. It is once again a Merger Monday. Lots of deals hitting the table. Take a look at some of the big ones, including Charles Schwab agreeing to buy TD Ameritrade in a big deal in financial services. Plus, look at the latest on the China trade negotiations. Maybe a window opening, perhaps. But first, let's go to Karen Moscow of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Karen.
All right, Paul, thank you. U.S. stocks are rising along with stocks globally after China said it'll tighten intellectual property rules. It's a move aimed at boosting the chances of a trade deal between the two largest economies. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, the S&P 500 is up 0.6% or 17 points at 3127. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.4% or 123 points at 27,999. And the Nasdaq's up 0.9% or 75 points at 8595. 10-year Treasury up 430 seconds, yield 1.75%. The yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.6% or 34 cents at 57.43 a barrel. COMEX gold down 1/3% or $4.80 at 14.6560 an ounce. The euro 1.1022 against the dollar, and the yen is at 108.83. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Lisa.
Thank you so much, Karen. Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the 6th straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit Commonwealth.com to learn more. We are seeing a bit of a positive tone to markets. Perhaps it's due to China, the fact that they're going to take, perhaps at least on the surface, a harder stance on IP theft. Perhaps it's also some of the mergers that we're seeing that are being received pretty well. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us here in our Interactive Brokers studios. So let's just set the tone. Is it really being driven by trade, or is this a number of mergers that seem to make sense to markets?
Well, the deal making is kind of front and center, though I will say that some of the strategists have noted the China's action on intellectual property over the weekend. And when you think about sort of trade-related areas of the market, semiconductors come to mind, and we're seeing some halfway decent gains among the chip makers in early trading, notably NVIDIA, which was raised to the equivalent buy from Hold Morgan Stanley. They're looking for demand for NVIDIA's gaming and data center chips to accelerate next year, and that stock up 4.4% at the moment. Second biggest gain in the S&P 500 behind only Tiffany, which accepted the deal that was offered by France's LVMH after the price went up. It's amazing how that happens. 12.5% increase in the per share value of this deal to $135. And Tiffany at the moment trading just below 133, which would, just on the face of it, suggest that this deal is going to happen at that price. And so, you've got a stock that's up almost 6% in response.
You know what's interesting? We had Andrea Felstead on from Bloomberg Opinion on just in the last hour, and she put out a great column today. And in that column, she notes that they're paying 16 times EBITDA for Tiffany. And when you think about a retailer, 16 times EBITDA, just extraordinary. But she went on to say that in luxury, it's a whole different retail landscape. The business is still good there, and it's driven by the Chinese. And those kinds of multiples are fairly representative of what's going on in the world of luxury.
Right. You already have Tiffany being present in Asia, where that demand is. So, from that perspective, there are only so many ways in terms of established kind of brands. And so if you're LVMH, you got to be looking at Tiffany with that kind of footprint, you might say, in mind.
It's interesting, even with the increased price, LVMH shares are up. Yep. More than 1%. I think that's compelling because you've got both shares of Tiffany and LVMH both rising. Meanwhile, the TD Ameritrade and Charles Schwab deal, it is going to be done, right? And although there is a question about regulatory action, right? Because there's been some noise by regulators saying, just wait a second.
Yeah, it's interesting. And E-Trade, which certainly kind of gets caught, if these two companies get together, initially fell in early trading in response to this deal finally being sewed up. There was so much talked about last week that TD Ameritrade shares rose 18%. But I'll tell you, E-Trade's now higher, which is kind of interesting, up 2%. So you have to wonder whether people are perhaps looking at the valuation of the deal and saying, well, maybe the concern we have about E-Trade isn't quite justified.
All right. Well, that said, we should just say that Ameritrade shares up nearly 4%, even after last week's gains. You're not seeing Schwab's shares down all that much, maybe half a percentage point at most. So.
Yeah, not even at this point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when you look at this deal, you're putting two big players together, and I'm sure we mentioned they're likely will have regulatory review, but I'm not sure. To me, this looks like a traditional cost synergy story, as opposed to we have some special sauce to grow our revenue at a faster rate.
Well, let's face it, it's all about cost at this point, given that Schwab cut its commissions on U.S. stock and exchange traded fund transactions to zero. So you have to find a way to kind of get around that, and getting together, getting bigger is a way to accomplish it. Now, if you want to talk about sort of the more traditional approach, look what's going on with eBay. With this Viagogo deal for their ticket broker unit, StubHub. So, and I think it's interesting, actually. The guy who founded Viagogo and serves as their CEO, Eric Baker, was also a co-founder of StubHub.
Oh, there you go.
So, you have things kind of coming back together. Humpty Dumpty being reunited in that sense. eBay shares up just 1.5%. This has been talked about for some time, the idea of selling StubHub, and now it's happening.
Humpty Dumpty has not been put together when it comes to Uber. Like that?
Yes, I see. Yeah.
Okay, anyway, moving right along. Because London regulators cracking down yet again and denying Uber a license, although it is on appeal. We're seeing Uber shares coming back from earlier lows that were down, I believe, more than 4% at one point. Now just down a little bit more, 1 and change percent. I'm just trying to understand the significance of this move by London regulators.
Well, what's interesting is if you read our coverage, that it's all about the way the app works. So in other words, you've got people kind of portraying themselves as Uber drivers on the app who are not, in fact, Uber drivers. So there are safety and security issues. At least that's what the story kind of laid out, and Transport for London, which is their regulator, didn't like that idea. So that's what's happening in this case. It's less about sort of the way that the company kind of presents itself, because obviously that's changed with Dara Khosrowshahi as CEO, as opposed to previous management, right. So we say. Now it's more just concern about the technology, which is kind of an interesting sort of issue to focus on here. And presumably, if that's what it is, then Uber should be able to fix it, or at the very least, provide some assurance to the regulators that they will fix it and, kind of get back to where they were.
Interesting. The Uber stock down, as you mentioned, Dave, about a little over 1%, but the Lyft is up almost 3% today. So just kind of shows that, the Lyft story is arguably a cleaner story because it's mostly just North American. And so I think investors may be saying, gee, maybe it's a little bit of a safer play on this ride-hailing business.
Yeah, although, as we've said before, Uber has appealed, so it's unclear what the final outcome here is. Yeah. Meanwhile, on the macro side, I do think it's important to note that we're seeing a 9th straight day of yield curve flattening in the United States. That's the gap between 2 and 10-year Treasury yields narrowing the most, or for the longest stretch since November 2015. I think this is compelling at a time when people are betting on reflation and betting on an acceleration heading into the beginning of 2020. You're not seeing it when it comes to proxies for inflation and growth in the bond market right now.
Yeah, and that gap, I'm just looking at the numbers here, has basically been cut in half in the last 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's an important thing to keep track of.
Yeah, absolutely. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for that discussion. And I also have to point out another story on the Bloomberg right now. Fox says Super Bowl ads are sold out at a record $5.6 million each. So television is not dead.
By the way, did you see Frozen 2 over the weekend?
I did not.
Yeah, really? You didn't just go?
No.
Just you hanging out?
No.
The theater,
no. My boys went to Ford
2.
versus Ferrari or something like that, and that got 2 thumbs up. So, but no, our household is a Frozen 2 free zone at the moment, but we'll see how long that lasts. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. to Nathan Hager for world and national headlines. Nathan.
Defense Secretary Mark Esper has fired Navy Secretary Richard Spencer over his handling of the case of a Navy SEAL accused of war crimes. Pentagon says Esper lost trust and confidence in Spencer after he went behind Esper's back to talk to the White House about letting Chief Petty Officer Edward Gallagher keep his rank and Navy SEAL trident pin after President Trump intervened. Democrat Adam Smith serves on the House Armed Services Committee.
I would hope that there will be Republicans who will be willing to step forward and say whatever the political consequences, If this was Barack Obama had done this, they would have voted to impeach him in a heartbeat with fraction of the evidence.
That's House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff speaking about the latest in the House impeachment investigation. His panel is putting together a report on weeks of depositions, documents, and testimony, even as it doesn't rule out the possibility of more hearings in the impeachment matter. Today, a federal judge could decide whether former White House counsel Don McGahn will be required to testify. That could set the precedent for other Trump administration officials who have been blocked from complying with congressional subpoenas. The Arab League is denouncing the Trump administration's announcement that it no longer considers Israeli settlements a violation of international law. Speaking at an emergency meeting a week after the policy shift, Secretary General Ahmed Abul-Gate called the decision unfairly biased and unacceptable. And in Hong Kong, police are sending a team of negotiators into a university campus where a small group of protesters remains holed up for more than a week. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Pickets. From the business community, has it become normal?
Tariffs. That is also below what the market is looking for.
Trade wars.
Give us an idea of how things are likely to evolve.
You don't want to turn away for a second. Don't worry, we're watching too.
Chief Asia economist joining us from our studios in Hong Kong.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Trade war got to be the top of mind there.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
I love Black Friday. Busy shops, crazy people, average deals. It's so much fun.
Said no one ever. So be savvy and do Black Friday the easy way with Smarty. Grab a huge 100 gig data SIM for just £17 a month on the Mega Plan. And with no credit checks, speed restrictions or contracts tying you down, you can kick back with the best Black Friday deal around. Now that's Smarty. Search Smarty Mobile to find out more, but hurry, as this deal won't be around for long. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties. The season to be jolly. Try our Party Time Indian snack selection for only $2.99. And our Party Time mac and cheese bites for just $1.19. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 25th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
My name's Ian, and I run the Christmas Centres for Crisis. Many people in Britain are homeless, stuck in hostels, sleeping on floors, even on the street. You can change this. Our Christmas Centres provide people with food, safety and support, and show them how Crisis can help them find a home and a job in the year ahead. You can reserve a place at Crisis this Christmas for just £28.87. Go to crisis.org.uk now. Help someone take their first step out of homelessness this Christmas. Thank you.
It's hard to enjoy your daily yoga routine when your mind is on your next VAT return and how to avoid the usual mistakes. But with QuickBooks, the new VAT Smart Scan technology does the work for you. As the deadline approaches, it checks for duplicates, looks for anomalies, and reviews VAT codes. So your biggest struggle is touching your forehead with your ankle.
Search for QuickBooks, perfect for making tax digital. QuickBooks, backing you.
Like all good tradespeople, Ford likes an early start too. That's why our Black Friday has already begun. Enjoy amazing savings across our hard-working range of new commercial vehicles. Save between £2,500 and £9,650 off the recommended retail price. Why wait until the 29th of November when you can have that Black Friday feeling today? Plus, there's 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire. Search Ford Black Friday. Ford, backbone of Britain.
Exclusions apply. Combined promotions available till 30th of November 2019 at participating dealers. For Ford Acquire, finance subject to status and deposit restrictions apply. Free post Ford credit.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are up today, opening a holiday-shortened week on a positive note following major merger announcements in the luxury and online brokerage industries, and a positive note in the U.S.-China trade negotiations. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.6% of 19. The Nasdaq's up 1%, up 85, and the Dow's up 0.5%, up 137. The 10 years up 4/32, the yield 1.75%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is down 0.3% at 57.64 a barrel. The COMEX gold down 0.3% at 14.6620 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.83. The euro $1.1022, and the British pound $1.2909. eBay is selling its ticket marketplace StubHub to European rival Viagogo for $4.05 billion in cash. That's Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
There was a minute there when a reflation trade was taking hold and people were expecting a steepening of the yield curve, an increase in future inflation expectations. What happened? Because we are seeing right now the 9th straight day of yield curve flattening. Drew Mattis, Chief Market Strategist for MetLife Investment Management, joining us right now from Whippany, New Jersey. Drew, thank you so much for being here. I want to start with the flattening yield curve and get your sense of how important it is to keep track of 9 straight days, the longest stretch since November 2015 of yield curve flattening in the U.S.
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence when the good days are days when the curve's steepening, and you can see that across markets, and you can see people's optimism begin to rise, and people begin to think, hey, we're heading towards a more normal environment. And then you have the days of flattening where, you can have up days in the market despite that, but people become a little more concerned about what the future might hold. And of course, you can argue the causation's working one way or the other. But I think broadly speaking, what we want to see is a steepening yield curve. I think what the Fed wants to see is a steepening yield curve. What they want is a curve that's steep enough that if they want to, they could actually hike rates again. Not that that's on their mindset for something near term, but longer term, they'd like to see things normalize enough where they could push rates higher again.
Do you think we even have any green shoots of that as it relates to the underlying economy?
Well, I think if you're the Fed and you've been blaming kind of uncertainty on kind of why you were cutting to begin with, we have seen some movement on trade. We're seeing some movement in Europe. Lots of areas of uncertainty are becoming, we're beginning to see pathways towards less uncertainty. So a conclusion being reached or moving towards that conclusion. The problem we have now is that there's so many different things and there's so many potential outcomes from trade and from politics and from the European story that because there's such complexity there, you can't figure out how to price everything. And so people then default to, I'm going to be risk on or I'm going to be risk off because they really can't put a value on all the things that are going on right now.
That said, you've seen a steady decline, or at least remaining stable, of five-year for break-even rates. In other words, another gauge of future inflation. You're not seeing a concept of reflation taking hold in broader derivative and bond markets. And I'm just wondering whether that signals that the Fed really ought to cut rates again.
Well, I don't think so. I think, first of all, the headline of current inflation that the Fed follows is actually very close to their target. So even when they were cutting rates and saying inflation's not high enough, they were actually very close to their target. I think any other Federal Reserve that hadn't been through the financial crisis would have been saying we're close enough and we're happy with that. So there is this fixation on pushing inflation, significantly higher or higher to the target and above, as opposed to just being near the target. And I think that could end up backfiring on the Fed simply because, really, if you're going to focus on that last 20 basis points or so of kind of inflation that you want to achieve, you might lose sight of the fact that, the rest of the economy seems to be doing well. And if there is an inflation surprise, it's going to put you well above a target that you're happy with. So, maybe a grind higher is better when you're approaching your target than a sharp move higher.
So, Drew, given the strong performance we've had across many asset classes here in 2019, and even comparing it from the lows of the fourth quarter of last year, as you look out to 2020, where do you see the most opportunity?
The problem is with valuations where they are, there aren't a great number. There isn't a lot of opportunity. So I kind of take it and put it in this way. If you're going to be investing in the current environment, you want to be aware of the risks that you're taking, and you want to know how those risks could evolve. And I think, oftentimes, people think they're taking one kind of risk, and they find out that, in fact, they were taking a different kind of risk. And so I think, as we're looking ahead, our view is that, next year looks good. The year after, though, 2021, is our likely timing for a recession. So, when we're thinking about things, we're thinking about, when's the next recession coming and how do you prepare for that? I think a lot of people, and there are a lot of forecasts out there now where people have very high probabilities of recession. Banks are saying that there's a high probability of recession, but then you look at their forecasts and there's no recession within their forecast.
Okay.
And I think that's something people have to be on the watch out for.
So just quickly here, Drew, 2021 recession, how do you trade that now?
Well, you begin to make sure that you're comfortable with all the exposure you have, and that you're in the near term at least, there's still some opportunities, but you don't necessarily want to, you might want to date those opportunities instead of marrying them.
So, Drew, interesting on a 2021 call. I mean, it's interesting right here. Does that suggest to you that maybe the Fed doesn't have as much ammo as they think it does? They do?
Yes. So, I think if we're thinking about where the Fed's going to head from this point, they're not going to be hiking rates next. That's not our view. Our view is that the next move will be lower. But at the same point, we don't think they're going to be moving at all next year.
Drew Mattis, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your commentary. Drew is the Chief Market Strategist for MetLife Investment Managers, joining us on the phone. So 2021, Drew, thinking potentially a recession in that time frame, certainly not in 2020 in his forecast.
Yeah, and I think that's becoming an increasing consensus among a lot of people. 2020 seems slim chances of a recession, especially given the election year, but 2021 potentially weaker. I do have to wonder, though, you could still see equity markets increase quite a bit.
Yes.
even though people are expecting a slowdown at some point.
Yeah, particularly if you get some of these global geopolitical issues, macro events such as trade, you get some resolution there. As Drew was mentioning, that we've seen that be a major driver of the market in both directions, trade and Brexit to a lesser extent. But then you have to look at good old earnings, so earnings growth for next year.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are in the green. Investors are digesting China's decision to tighten intellectual property rules, a move that may boost the chances of a trade deal. China said over the weekend it will raise penalties on intellectual property violations as it tries to smooth over one of the sticking points in talks with the U.S. government. It is the largest luxury goods deal ever. LVMH has agreed to buy Tiffany for more than $16 billion. That will raise the French conglomerate's profile in jewelry, and it gives the parent of Louis Vuitton access to a bigger chunk of American shoppers. Drug giant Novartis agreed to buy medicines company for $9.7 billion. Novartis will be getting a promising cholesterol drug in the deal. And Frozen 2 dominated the box office this weekend with fans of Anna and Elsa dropping $127 million. That's according to ComScore. The original Frozen, a tough act to follow. That film delivered $1.27 billion in global ticket sales. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
At Little, we're big on all those Christmas parties. The season to be jolly. Try our party time Indian snack selection for only $2.99. And our party time mac and cheese bites for just $1.19. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always little on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 25th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Going, gone.
Some things just don't hang around, like a great deal in Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Right now you can get the Samsung Galaxy S10 for just $29.99 a month, but this deal ends Sunday 1st of December. Catch it before it's gone. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Tesco Mobile, every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £35.99, now £29.99. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Hey, turn it down. Now play the big hit. That's better. Get our lowest ever price on these Bose QC35 wireless headphones. With noise cancellation and voice control in the Black Tag event at Curry's PC World. Or get £50 off Bose SoundLink on-ear wireless headphones. Either way, you get 6 months free Spotify in the Black Tag event at Curry's PC World. T's and C's apply.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
The swagger of a perfect dunk. The rush of a three made from all the way downtown. The adrenaline surge of great defense. Can you feel the goosebumps yet? There's nothing like live NBA and nothing like listening live on TuneIn.
Giannis down the lane of the rim, going down. Right corner three, another one.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season so you can be there when it matters most. Never miss the action as it happens. Hear the ball you love. Hear it live on TuneIn. Search NBA Today to start listening.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, the tie-up between Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade. We'll take a look at what the significance is for the entire brokerage industry. Plus, we'll take a look at the latest on U.S.-China trade, intellectual property theft. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Lisa, stocks are climbing to record highs after China indicated it will tighten intellectual property rules, a move aimed at boosting the chances of a trade deal between the U.S. and China. The dollar's mixed. Michael Houston, CMC Market tells Bloomberg he is not optimistic a phase one deal with China will be done by the end of this year.
I don't think it'll get done before the year end. I think there's still a big unknown with respect to what happens with these 15th of December tariffs, and I certainly don't think it's in the president's interest to conclude a phase one deal quite yet. We're still just under a year away from this presidential election, and I think if he draws a line under the China-US phase one, then where's he got to go to next?
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.6%, up 20. The Dow's up 0.5%, up 143. And the Nasdaq's up 1.1%, up 96. The 10-year is up 3/32, the yield 1.75%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.1% at 57.71 a barrel, with COMEX gold down 0.3% at 14.6550 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.87, the euro $1.10.19, and the British pound $1.29.01. Uber lost its license in London for the second time in less than 3 years, putting one of its biggest markets outside the U.S. at risk. Right now, Uber's down 0.5%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
It's 10:33 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by opinion columnist Brian Chapata. We're going to talk about this big deal, Schwab buying TD Ameritrade, $26 billion deal. Brian, what I really want to focus on is the column you wrote about this deal. And I want to get a sense of what is the connection between Schwab's announcement a couple months ago that was going to zero fees on certain equities and ETFs and things like that to this deal for TD Ameritrade?
Yeah, I think my fellow columnist Matt Levine, unfortunately for me, put it way better than I did, that Schwab broke TD Ameritrade just to buy it, right? And I mean, that's sort of the feeling out there, is that they went to zero fees and forced TD Ameritrade to follow suit along with a bunch of other competitors. And because Schwab was so much less reliant on these fees, it was able to buy it on the cheap and consolidate.
That is a cynical take.
It is.
but probably pretty accurate.
And you know, I mean, I think the big question going forward is going to be what kind of antitrust regulations will they run into? There's some analysts saying that this could drag on into the third quarter of next year. Fidelity, one of its main competitors out there, has already put out a statement to me and a few other people here at Bloomberg, sort of pointing out, you know, while all of this is going to be tied up in potential regulation, we're going to continue to focus on delivering the best results for our customers. So a lot still to play out here, but it's definitely a potential game changer, reshaping the industry, things like that.
There's a lot of agreement that this is a cost-cutting measure that will be successful in the terms of synergies or whatever else you want to call it between Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade. Less clear is the way they're going to actually make more money.
Right.
Do we have any sense of where those opportunities are at this point?
Well, again, the sort of cynical take is that if you become bigger, you're able to have more power to potentially lower interest payments on the various accounts of clients, or you do
enter the antitrust regulators.
Right.
Go on.
I mean, do some things on the margins in order to effectively undo the lost revenue from cutting fees on stocks and ETFs and options to zero. There are ways to do it if you are bigger, if you have, you know, less competition. So that's the cynical take. I mean, Schwab basically has said that they still have numerous competitors that are way bigger than them. They're going to come after us, but we're going to keep doing our thing, and we're going to have a lot of resources in order to do it. So still a lot to play out, but consolidation is clearly coming for this industry. This probably won't be the last merger.
I was going to say, what is Schwab? Not that, I mean, Schwab, this is a huge deal for Schwab. Just looking at its market cap, $62 billion. So this $26 billion deal is a big, big deal for them. Are they done now, or is there an expectation that they need to diversify more, maybe grow more, wrap up this electronic trading business even more? What's the expectation?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it feels like this is, you know, their big move for now, and they're going to see how things shake out going forward. But I mean, you have to anticipate, just the way that all financial services seem to be going, that it's not going to be the end of this. If it's not Schwab, maybe it's another rival that sort of comes in and tries to effectively add assets via acquisition. You just got to keep growing in this industry, whether it's discount brokerage or whether it's the mutual fund industry. You see sort of the same trends playing out, continuous cost cutting, trying to effectively save money on the investor side. But again, there's no free lunch, as they say, to use a cliche. I mean, there's going to be, once you become bigger, you have other levers you can pull in order to make things up.
There's a question I have. At what point will these firms start looking like little banks? Or big banks, or just banks, period, at the end. I mean, if you think about it, there's talk about lending and doing other consumer services to try to increase profitability and revenues, and you just have to think, at what point do they then become subject to a whole host of other regulatory issues, and how successful has the banking model been for others? I mean, there just are a whole host of sort of more existential questions facing this entire industry.
Not to mention the fact that there is a sentiment out there in general, I would say, that is anti-big bank and anti-technology. Big technology firms. I mean, this growing...
You should clarify that, because certainly the big banks have gotten bigger and they are doing just fine.
Sure.
But you're saying from a regulatory and sort of political stance?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think that there are questions now being raised about, you know, how big is too big? You know, if there's no competition, is that really good for anyone? And so you have this Schwab entity that is now pioneered no-fee trading, but you know, again, it's just going to be a big question of, is that ultimately, are there sort of hidden risks for potential individual investors?
It's good for the consumer. I mean, I'm trading my stocks now for
maybe.
Okay.
I mean, the question is, and Brian really raised it well, which is, how concerning would it be if they did beat out their competition, became the only game in town, and then were able to jack prices again, right? I mean, that's sort of the concern for the antitrust.
And
regulators.
there's the financial advisory aspect, too. I mean, if you become the only game in town as a financial advisor, what does that look like? And that's kind of a weird thing to be thinking about if everybody across the country is getting their financial advice effectively from the same source. It's a little bit weird. We have that already in ETFs where there's just a few big fish. But if that starts to extend to financial advisory too, and there's no more mom and pops to hold your hand as you're investing for your kids' college or for your own retirement, it could be a really, really interesting ballgame.
So, Paul, will you come hold my hand while I plan for my kids' college? Because I am petrified. Brian Chapata, thank you so much. Brian Chapata is a debt markets columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, joining us here in our interactive broker studios. Definitely college planning. Whew,
Max
scary.
Out 401k.
But you've got 4. So you have it worse than I do. We are seeing the shares of Schwab and TD Ameritrade have generally traded up on this news. Right now, let's head toward 1901 Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Lisa, after a dozen witnesses over 2 weeks, what comes next in the House impeachment investigation into President Trump? Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
Lawmakers are moving expeditiously as directed by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The House Intelligence Panel will submit a report to the Judiciary Panel, and then House Democrats will consider drafting formal articles of impeachment that would focus on President Trump's dealings with Ukraine and the administration's attempts to block the investigation. They hope to be finished with an impeachment vote by Christmas and send articles to the Republican-controlled Senate for a trial in 2020. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Meantime, President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, says he talked about representing a state-owned bank in Ukraine over the summer, even as he was pressuring Ukraine's government on the president's behalf. Giuliani says Privat Bank's lawyers asked if he could help in their legal dispute with a previous owner who has ties to Ukraine's president and is the subject of a federal investigation. Giuliani ultimately did not take the job. The Supreme Court has decided not to step into a legal dispute between a climate scientist and a pair of conservative organizations that questioned his work. Justices decided not to take up an appeal from the Competitive Enterprise Institute and National Review. Scientist Michael Mann sued both for defamation over a column that compared him and his work to convicted child molester Jerry Sandusky. George Papadopoulos, the former Trump campaign aide who became a key figure in the FBI's Russia probe, is now a candidate for Congress. He tells Fox News he's running for the Los Angeles area seat, was vacated by Democrat Katie Hill, who resigned last month under an ethics probe. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
The market.
I love Black Friday. Busy shops, crazy people, average deals. It's so much fun.
Said no one ever. So be savvy and do Black Friday the easy way with Smarty. Grab a huge 100 gig data SIM for just £17 a month on the Mega Plan. And with no credit checks, speed restrictions or contracts tying you down, you can kick back with the best Black Friday deal around. Now that's Smarty. Search Smarty Mobile to find out more, but hurry, as this deal won't be around for long. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
At Lidl, we're big on those little reasons to be jolly. Like our delicious Favorina all butter mini Stollen bites for just $1.99. And 6 deluxe mince pies for just $1.35. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If your ideas challenge the status quo, if you have advised people you had no right advising, if you built companies and lost companies and built them again, if you've been called a pillock, a dreamer, an innovator and a genius, if you thrive in the 11th hour, if you have blown it and completely nailed it in the same day, prepare for your next departure.
Do business right. Travel Virgin Atlantic.
It's hard to enjoy your daily yoga routine when your mind is on your next VAT return and how to avoid the usual mistakes. But with QuickBooks, the new VAT Smart Scan technology does the work for you. As the deadline approaches, it checks for duplicates, looks for anomalies, and reviews VAT codes. So your biggest struggle is touching your forehead with your ankle.
Search for QuickBooks. Perfect for making tax digital. QuickBooks. Backing you.
Going, gone.
Some things just don't hang around. Like a great deal in Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Right now you can get the Samsung Galaxy S10 for just $29.99 a month. But this deal ends Sunday 1st of December. Catch it before it's gone. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £35.99, now £29.99. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Mate, this fan's suspension is rubbish.
Tell me about it.
Even the radio's had it.
I know, but I'd get nothing if I scrapped it.
Actually, you can get at least £2,000 off a new Ford for it.
You're kidding.
With Ford's new for old scrappage scheme, you can get between £2,000 and £6,250 off a new Ford van if you scrap an eligible vehicle with us responsibly. Also, there's 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire. Ford Commercial Vehicles. Backbone of Britain. Search Ford Scrappage. Exclusions apply. Contract and register by 31st of December 2019 at participating dealers. Agent ownership criteria apply to scrappage vehicle. Subject to status. Free post full credit. Deposit restrictions apply.
This is the sound of festive fun in London. You want to keep your savings for the things you love this Christmas, not a new boiler. We're with you. So our boilers come with 2 years interest-free credit to keep your savings for a Merry Christmas. You'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty, and now we can quote by video call evenings or weekends. Get a quote by the 30th of November and get £150 off a new boiler, or £450 off for existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
More all-time highs for the S&P and the NASDAQ after China said over the weekend it'll raise penalties on intellectual property violations. It's trying to smooth over a sticking point in talks, adding to optimism the multi-billion-dollar merger between Schwab and Ameritrade. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.6%, up 20. Dow's up 0.5%, up 144, and the Nasdaq's up 1.2%, up 102. 10-year is up 3/30 seconds, the yield 1.75%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.4% at 57.55 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.3% at 14.6560 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.89, the euro $1.10.15, and the British pound $1.29.08. Novartis agrees to buy medicines company and is promising heart drug for $9.7 billion. Medicines experimental treatment inclisiran uses a new approach to lower bad cholesterol. Medicines is up 22%. Novartis is up 1%. That is Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
As Greg Jarrett was mentioning, China is agreeing to take a harder stance on intellectual property theft as part of the ongoing trade wars. Hard to know exactly how to frame this, though, given that there are not that many more details. But luckily, we have Henrietta Trey's joining us now to help us do that. Director of Economic Policy Research at Veda Partners, joining us from New Orleans. Henrietta, what did you make of the IP theft news that was coming out overnight? How seriously should markets be taking this?
I think it's, at first glance, good news. What we've seen from President Xi in the past is when they are making concessions or doing things that the Americans have been asking of Beijing, they tend to announce it separately or in advance of any kind of deal being reached, so that they can present as though they've just independently decided to make this move. We saw that on the financial markets access opening up. They've done this IP theft type of extraction several times in the last few years. So on the one hand, it bodes well for, hey, maybe there's something that could be announced in the coming days in terms of a phase one deal, and they're trying to get out in front of that and appear more autonomous and doing it of their own volition. But at the same time, there's not very many details. One of the things that concerns me is that this is happening absent a phase one deal being announced, or even a deadline or set meeting for Vice Premier Liu He and USTR Lighthizer to even meet, let alone President Trump and President Xi meeting to ink a deal. So a lot of this is happening outside of any comprehensive details on phase one, and of course enforcement remains the number one issue for me.
So Henrietta, can you just give us a reset kind of where we are, or really where the Chinese are in terms of their thinking about how incented are they to get a phase one deal?
I think right now the goal is to avert List 4B tariffs, which is about $160 billion of consumer-facing goods set for December 15th. And what I'd encourage investors to do is sort of separate out the ability of the United States and China to come to an agreement that staves off that December 15th escalation from necessarily reaching a phase one deal. In my view, we are already delayed. We've already moved the goalposts. We're entering into week 7 of the phase one trade deal being announced, which was set to be a 3 to 5 week, wrapping up final negotiations period. So we've already delayed substantially. And based on what we've seen from the administration over the last 2 years, they're pretty comfortable pushing out deadlines. So December 15th moving to, let's say, January, February, March 15th, or even being suspended altogether, as was the case with the escalation on lists 1, 2, and 3, rising in their tariff rates from 25% to 30%, I think is distinctly possible and doesn't necessarily have to be a phase one deal. The problem is the longer this takes to work, the more other components are happening in the ether, like the Hong Kong protests or the impeachment proceedings in the United States, the lack of a USMCA vote. Time continues to tick by, and phase one deals are not being reached in a vacuum. So I'm hopeful that we won't see the tariffs, but that doesn't mean we have to see a phase one deal.
So phase one was supposedly soybeans, ag purchases, the easy stuff. That has run into roadblocks, we're hearing, with questions about enforcement and just how much, as far as a number figure goes, China's agreeing to buy. Intellectual property theft was supposed to be phase 2, according to my understanding, because I thought that this was one of the hairier things. So can you try to square the idea that we're running into issues with soybean purchases, which was supposed to be the easy stuff, and we seem to be getting something on IP theft, which was the tough stuff?
That's such a good way to phrase it. If I'm not mistaken, the most recent orders were 3-month lows on soybeans as China's getting
just out today.
Right. So, really interesting development, and I think that's a great point that you make. When it comes to ag purchases, I think we should maybe think about the diversification that we've seen from China. So the most prominent, I think, would be in terms of protein sources, having them sign that poultry deal a week or two back. That was a really tremendous development that I think constitutes systemic systemic reform, like the administration has been trying to seek out in, as you suggest, IP theft or any kind of major significant uptick in agriculture purchases. So we're seeing it on some areas, but not on others. They are importing pork to at least some extent, and then the poultry component could be $1 billion industry once they get those trade lines reopened. The soy piece is an unfortunate decline, but if you are dealing with 40 to 50% less pork in China, they need less soy to feed them. So I guess it does track. The IP theft component, though, just like with everything else, is you really need technical details, and we have none of those. So President Trump alluded to IP theft in some way, shape, or form being included in a phase one deal, and if this is the extent of it, then it's not nearly enough to constitute systemic reform. And I think, just to sort of sound like a broken record, it comes down to enforcement. If China is agreeing to make changes and they're hoping that the United States will back off on further tariffs or take off whole baskets of tariffs, which is what I think a lot of investors are hoping for and the Chinese absolutely want, this is a way to incentivize the United States to get more comfortable with easing the enforcement components and taking tariffs off before they reach any kind of final agreement, on phase 2 or phase 3 or what have you. And unfortunately, I just don't see USTR Lighthizer agreeing to take off tremendous amounts of tariffs. One of the things that I try to advise our clients about all the time is to say, look, before tariffs come off on entire product lines and huge, list 4A baskets are lifted entirely, recognize that the USTR has a comprehensive 1, 2, and 6 month enforcement strategy that he has already laid out for us that I think will more likely result in the initial step being to reduce tariff rates, not to reduce the overall basket of goods that are tariffs. So, for instance, the list 4A tariffs, which are $112 billion worth of goods, 15%, instead of taking all that $112 billion off, you drop the rate from 15% to 10%, and then maybe 6 months later reassess. And that's how Lighthizer will allow for enforcement of whatever China commits to on IP or ag purchases for that matter.
So, Henrietta, just about 30 seconds. What happened to the feeling maybe 6 months ago that the Chinese were just going to wait to 2020 and take their bets with whoever's in the White House then?
My understanding is that the U.S. hawks in China really got spooked by the administration's decision to dramatically escalate tariffs in mid-August. The White House has been walking that back ever since, as we've seen. But that was the big game changer in that the administration, and specifically President Trump, acted way outside the bounds of what U.S. hawks in China expected. And they might be better off reaching a phase one deal now and hitting the pause button, which I think is really what a phase one deal is, just an opportunity to hit pause through the elections. So hopefully we get to that.
Henrietta Treyz, thank you so much for joining us. Some really smart commentary there on the ongoing U.S.-China trade negotiations. Henrietta is the Director of Economic Policy Research for Veda Partners, joining us on the phone from New Orleans with some really interesting commentary as it relates to the tariffs. And that's one, we got to really focus on these December 15th tariffs.
I thought what she said was really telling. The idea that that we can expect China to announce concessions that they make ahead of any deal that gets reached, so that it seems like it's coming from their own volition.
Right.
So from that perspective, this was viewed very positively. I thought that was incredibly insightful.
Yeah, absolutely. And the market certainly like it. The S&P is up about 20 points here. The Dow up to 136, over 28,012 on the Dow Jones Industrials.
A record.
A record. This is Bloomberg.
Next. Nah. Nope. Boring. If you skip through loads of your TV channels, why are you paying loads of money for them? With TalkTalk TV and Faster Fibre, you can access the nation's favourite TV shows, a world of films and sport, live and on demand, all for £25.95 a month for 18 months. And if you're quick, you'll even get a year of Amazon Prime on us. Search TalkTalk TV. TalkTalk. For everyone. Offer ends 5th of December, subject to availability. T's and C's apply.
At Lidl, we're big on those little reasons to be jolly. Like our delicious Favorina all butter mini Stollen bites for just $1.99. And 6 deluxe mince pies for just $1.35. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden. glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. Or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If your ideas challenge the status quo, if you have advised people you had no right advising, if you built companies and lost companies and built them again, if you've been called a pillock, a dreamer, an innovator and a genius, if you thrive in the 11th hour, if you have blown it and completely nailed it in the same day, prepare for your next departure.
Do business right. Travel Virgin Atlantic.
It's hard to enjoy your daily yoga routine when your mind is on your next VAT return and how to avoid the usual mistakes. But with QuickBooks, the new VAT Smart Scan technology does the work for you. As the deadline approaches, it checks for duplicates, looks for anomalies, and reviews VAT codes. So your biggest struggle is touching your forehead with your ankle.
Search for QuickBooks, perfect for making tax digital. QuickBooks, backing you.
Looking for a great phone to take brilliant photos, like an incredible iPhone 7 with a 12-megapixel camera? Then look no further than Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. You'll find an iPhone 7 for just $14.49 a month, our lowest ever price. Be quick, this deal ends Sunday, 1st of December. Tesco Mobile, every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion. Was £19.75, now £14.49. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase, policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, when we talk about capital flows and the war for capital, gains can be had perhaps outside of U.S. and China. The Star Stock Picker finding some places that offer up much more. We'll talk about that. Plus, coming up, we're going to talk about Uber shares falling after a London regulatory decision. Right now, though, let's head over to Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are higher, Lisa, all the way to new records over renewed optimism for a trade agreement and several blockbuster deals. But Chris Marangi, Gabelli Funds, tells Bloomberg it may be time to start paying attention to non-USA markets for continuing returns.
Now, I'm not sure there's enough bad news priced into U.S. markets at the moment. Obviously, I think there's going to be a lot of uncertainty in the U.S. next year, a wide range of policy outcomes, and perhaps investors look to escape some of that, believe it or not, outside the U.S.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.6%, up 19. The Dow is up 0.5%, up 130, and the Nasdaq's up 1.2%, up 99. The 10-year is up 3/30 seconds. The yield 1.76%. West Texas Intermediate crude is now changed at $57.78 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 0.4% at $14.6420 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.94. The euro $1.1012. The latest signs of progress for those trade negotiations open a week that is relatively light on economic earnings reports. Consumer confidence and new home sales data are expected tomorrow. The Commerce Department will report third quarter GDP on Wednesday. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets continues now with Lisa and Paul.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much. Well, Bloomberg's editor-in-chief emeritus, Matt Winkler's out with a very... Oh, I'm sorry. We forgot about you, Dave.
I didn't forget about you. I didn't forget about you.
The studio, and my focus goes right to there. But let's talk about...
What can I say?
That happens. I'm sure that happens.
Mine does, too, let me tell you. In any case,
let's see what's going on with the small caps.
And this is a day to talk about them. The Russell 2000 index is up 1.8%. If that holds up, it would be the biggest gain in 2.5 months. And consider the S&P 500 is only up 0.6%, so smaller companies are definitely carrying the day.
The Russell's sharpest advance at the moment belongs to Sorrento Therapeutics. The ticker is SRNE. The drug developer has risen 56% after disclosing it received and rejected a takeover offer. The all-cash proposal's value per share was as much as 3 times last week's closing price. Medicines Company, ticker MDCO, has climbed about 22.5%. The maker of cholesterol drugs accepted a $6.8 billion takeover offer from Switzerland's Novartis, and that deal led Robert W. Baird to raise its rating on another drug maker, Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals, the equivalent of buy from hold. Arrowhead's ticker is ARWR, and it's up 21%. Now, the Russell's steepest drop belongs to CymaBay Therapeutics, ticker CBAY. It's down more than 76%. The drug developer ended a study of a proposed treatment for liver disease. And La Jolla Pharmaceuticals, ticker LJPC, has fallen about 55.5%. CEO George Tidmarsh has left the drug developer, which also said it's stopping work on a medicine to prevent excessive buildup of iron.
Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, thank you so much for being with us. And now we do go to the editor-in-chief emeritus, Matthew Winkler, joining us here in our Interactive Broker Studios. A really compelling column that he wrote highlighting what one of the world's most successful stock pickers has been doing. You identify some areas of the world that he's been particularly successful in. Why is it so interesting to you that they are not the U.S. or China?
So the 2 largest economies in the world, as you know, are what you just said. And that's not likely to change. And for the better part of the decade, the most successful stock picker, I would say, or at least one of the most successful, has, as recently as beginning of 2015, had almost 90% of his holdings in the U.S. and China, at a time when both those economies, of course, are driving, if you like, business around the world for all kinds of reasons. So recently, past year and a half, that all changed. Now, Noah Blackstein, who has the Dynamic Power Global Growth Fund, he's based in Toronto, has an approach that is decidedly not political, decidedly not geographical. In fact, he says, I only invest in companies. I never invest in countries. That's how he puts it. And what he means by that is he picks 20 to 25 companies. That's his portfolio. And he goes wherever he thinks the growth is. And what's revealing is that now the U.S. is down to 23%. It was more than 60% just a few years back. China is down to 3%. Instead, he's got Argentina as his second largest holding. Now, there are 2 companies there. One in particular is called Mercado Libre, which stands for free market. And that is the Amazon of Latin America, and it's doing spectacularly well. And the other companies are very similar in that they are very technological. They are all about repositioning or replatforming businesses on online platforms. And the world, if you look at it just through Blackstein's lens, is very disordered, poised for further disarray. And it doesn't look like the U.S. and China are anywhere near the lead that they have been in the past decade. So that's what's interesting. Now, as I said, he will say there's no shortage of companies to invest in. He's very happy about that. It's just that it takes him to places now like not just Argentina, but Israel, Singapore, Japan. These are, Brazil. These are the countries that are at the top of his list, even though he doesn't invest in countries.
How has his performance been since this move kind of to some of these differing countries?
Okay, so he invests for the long term, and what that means is over 10 years, it's a 307% total return, which is more than double the MSCI global index by comparison. So far this year, if you looked at him relative to any number of benchmarks, he's ahead of the MSCI. He's behind the U.S., although, as I said, the U.S. is still the biggest holding. But he's still ahead. He's still beating the benchmark. So the answer to your question is, right now, if you measured him against the S&P 500, not so great, but that's not what he does. He invests for the long term, and it's all about, turning something that goes from literally zero to double or even triple digits. And so far this year, he's fine.
And so he does specify he doesn't do top down. He looks at the specific companies, and you do highlight that again and again.
Yeah, he's not a macro man.
He's not a macro man.
Yeah, everything that you guys talk about every day.
Exactly. He doesn't care
he
about
doesn't care about
anyway.
All he cares about. He actually cares about what Dave Wilson talks about.
We all care about what he says.
I have to say, it's an honor always to be around Dave Wilson because he has this encyclopedic mind when it comes to companies.
I so agree.
And so, in a way, it's kind of a neat privilege to be able to share what Blackstein has been doing at the same time that Dave every day does his show with you.
Matt Winkler, such a pleasure having you here. Thank you, co-founder of Bloomberg News, and editor-in-chief emeritus here. And I have to say, I was actually, I saw American Factory, the documentary, over the weekend, and it really struck me how much of the U.S. and China both, their economies have been tied to production and industrial output and how that's shifting. I mean, it sort of has these statistics about how factory jobs are going to be much more automated. So then where does the growth come from? And it sort of forces you to rethink which countries will have the lead, even as the U.S. and China squabble over some of the issues with respect to industrial output. Just really, I will just add my 2 cents on a macro level, something that I was thinking about as I was hearing Matt Winkler so eloquently discussing this portfolio manager's strategy. Noah Blackstein's Dynamic Power Global Growth Fund returned 307% during the past decade. Right now, let's head over to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager there with world and national headlines. Nathan.
Lisa, Defense Secretary Mark Esper says President Trump gave him a direct order not to expel a Navy SEAL accused of war crimes. Esper is saying more about the case a day after he asked for and received Navy Secretary Richard Spencer's resignation for going behind his back over Chief Petty Officer Edward Gallagher. Democrat Adam Smith serves on the House Armed Services Committee.
I think it's quite clear that Secretary Spencer was troubled by the president inserting himself that far down the chain of command, undermining the chain of command to insert himself into the disciplinary action. So Secretary Spencer's been troubled by that for a long time, but it does seem like he also tried to, work his way around that without going through proper channels with Secretary Esper.
A federal judge in Washington should decide by the end of the day whether former White House counsel Don McGahn will have to testify in the House impeachment investigation. This as the Intelligence Committee works to boil the documents and testimony it's already received into a report for the House Judiciary Committee. Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff.
There are still other witnesses, other documents that we would like to obtain. But we're not willing to go the months and months and months of rope-a-dope in the courts, which Mr. would more than love for us to do.
Schiff was on NBC's Meet the Press. Sources tell Bloomberg the evidence so far could lead to at least 3 articles of impeachment. It's the first endorsement from the early voting state of Nevada in the 2020 election cycle. Democratic Congresswoman Dina Titus is backing Joe Biden, telling CNN he's the best qualified candidate with the best chance of beating President Trump. Titus's district includes Las Vegas. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Intellectual property, one of the most valuable things we market in Asia.
I understand you're trying to rival the likes of San Francisco, New York.
We have our own brand of intellectual property.
Let's focus first on this U.S.-China trade story.
Find out why it's so valuable.
Do you need to see substance in an agreement or just that they stop shouting at each other?
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia, tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In-depth analysis.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery's running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
I love Black Friday. Busy shops, crazy people, average deals. It's so much fun.
Said no one ever. So be savvy and do Black Friday the easy way with Smarty. Grab a huge 100 gig data SIM for just £17 a month on the Mega Plan. And with no credit checks, speed restrictions or contracts tying you down, you can kick back with the best Black Friday deal around. Now that's Smarty. Search Smarty Mobile to find out more, but hurry, as this deal won't be around for long. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
At Lidl, we're big on those little reasons to be jolly. Like our delicious Favorina all butter mini Stollen bites for just $1.99. And 6 deluxe mince pies for just $1.35. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores, exclusion I.
Can you think of a better use for the time you spend keying in your business accounts? Good. Because smarter bookkeeping from Sage reduces that time dramatically, simply by taking care of repetitive tasks. It's helpful ideas like these that make us the UK's #1 for managing finance, operations and people. Trusted by over 1 million businesses nationwide. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 25th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
My name's Ian, and I run the Christmas Centres for Crisis. Many people in Britain are homeless, stuck in hostels, sleeping on floors, even on the street. You can change this. Our Christmas Centres provide people with food, safety and support, and show them how Crisis can help them find a home and a job in the year ahead. You can reserve a place at Crisis this Christmas for just £28.87. Go to crisis.org.uk now. Help someone take their first step out of homelessness this Christmas. Thank you.
3 is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. £30 million to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. 25 years of the National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over. Looking for a great phone to take brilliant photos? Like an incredible iPhone 7 with a 12-megapixel camera? Then look no further than Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. You'll find an iPhone 7 for just $14.49 a month, our lowest ever price. Be quick, this deal ends Sunday, 1st of December. Tesco Mobile, every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion. Was £19.75, now £14.49. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks climbed to records on optimism over China trade relations and a fresh wave of merger and acquisition activity. The dollar is mixed. We check the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. Off earlier highs, but still well into the green. The S&P is up 0.6%, up 17. The Dow is up 0.4%, up 115, and the Nasdaq's up 1.1%, up 97. The 10-year is up 430 seconds, the yield 1.75%. West Texas Intermediate crude in the red early is now up 0.3% at 57.94 a barrel, while COMEX gold's down 0.4% at 14.6420 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.91, the euro $1.1013, the British pound $1.2906. Charles Schwab agrees to buy TD Ameritrade Holding for about $26 billion in a deal that is forecast to reshape the retail brokerage business. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, it looks like Uber has run into another roadblock in London, losing their license over rider safety concerns. The stock is off about 1.3% today, off about 35% from its IPO.
We should say they have appealed that, so it's not a completely final thing yet.
Absolutely. Let's get the latest. Nate Langston, European technology editor for Bloomberg News, joining us from our London radio studio. So, Nate, give us the latest on what's going on with Uber and the City of London.
Yeah, well, it's probably worth stepping back just very briefly because a couple of years ago, when Uber's previous full license was refused a renewal, it immediately had to appeal and was allowed to continue operating for several months while that appeal took place. And just over 2 years on from that, the same thing has happened again. It was applying for a new license and it was refused, and now Uber is appealing that license and is able to carry on operating at least while the appeals process goes through. So cars aren't being pulled off the road, drivers can still accept new rides, but obviously it's a huge blow in one of the biggest markets that Uber has outside of the US.
How should we view this? Is this a political issue with some of the other cab drivers in the City of London winning a political battle here versus a legitimate complaint that regulators have against Uber?
There is a legitimate reason for complaint here. TfL, who's our transit authority here, did find evidence of many journeys, 14,000 journeys at least, being made by drivers who either didn't have a license or even had their license revoked in the past. And I think that speaks for itself. As to the political angle, if you ask any black cab driver here in London whether they like Uber, you'll get a pretty unanimous response that they do not. And Sadiq Khan, who's the mayor of London, is on the Labour Party side of the political spectrum here, and he's come out in support for what TfL has done as well. And there's a very big union support on the Labour side for the black cab industry. So it is easy to think that there's an element of political motivation here, but fundamentally the decision is for the regulator, which is apolitical, and that's the body that's made this decision and had the final say.
So, Nate, give us a sense of how the good people of London view their black taxi cab fleet. I mean, when I'm in London, I just think it's a joy to use. It's a great, great service. It's a great experience, and I contrast it with what we have had to deal with here in New York. So is there public support for the black cabs, or are people just saying, hey, we want the cheapest ride, the easiest ride, the most convenient ride?
I mean, for anyone coming in from out of town, I imagine there's a lot of fun in getting a black cab, and certainly, they're good vehicles and they're very convenient. But for most people who live here, it comes down to cost and who's going to be fastest. And because Uber is so pervasive across the capital, there's 45,000 drivers just in London alone. It's easy to become very, very fond of Uber. And personally, I use Uber many, many more times than I do a black cab for for personal and for work. So I don't think the cab industry has any reason to be any more worried than it was before. But I also don't think they're going to lose any business to people coming in from overseas who just liked the novelty maybe of taking a black cab.
How crucial is London to Uber's Europe strategy at this point?
Well, it's one of the biggest markets. I think it's one of the fifth most lucrative city for Uber in total. So it's very, very important. But it's not the only one. Uber is active in many cities across the continent, and I think that losing London will send a very challenging message to other cities. But I don't think it's going to necessarily be a black hole for the whole European arm of the company.
So, Nate, what's the next step for, I guess, Uber here? They're appealing it. Do they have a hearing, and what's kind of the timing here?
Well, if the timing follows a similar step to what we saw in 2017 when this happened last time, Uber filed the appeal that year in September, and the hearing took place in June the following year. So there's a several-month window for that appeal to even hit the first magistrate's court. So I would certainly, we haven't any information to suggest that would be any different this time. If Uber were to lose that appeal in several months' time, potentially, it could still take this all the way up to the Supreme Court here, and that's a process that's, it could be measured in years rather than months. And throughout this process, Uber has the legal right to continue operating. So I certainly don't see any reason for drivers to be overly concerned in the near term, and certainly not before next year.
Nate Lanson, thank you so much for being with us. Nate Lanson covers all things technology related, Bloomberg European Bureau. Technology, is Uber a technology company?
Oh boy, don't get us started now. I think the stock will tell you IPOing at 44 and down 35% from the $45 IPO price. So it doesn't feel like a tech stock. But
I guess that their tech, which is the app, is what's under fire.
Right.
From the London regulators saying that there is an issue with it where basically people who were kicked out of being licensed Uber drivers can pretend to be licensed Uber drivers and pick people up.
Right. I don't know. When I'm in London, I'm not going to say I really go out of my way, but my first choice clearly is always a black cab, and there's none available, then I'll Uber. Whereas in New York, it's the exact opposite.
Is it because the black cabs are so much nicer?
It's an excellent experience. It's a great service, excellent experience. The drivers are outstanding. It's unlike any other place in the world that I've been to, and it's certainly just leaps and bounds above the experience that you have in New York City with the yellow cabs, which is why I think, in many cities around the world, I guess, just not the country, Uber and Lyft have been so successful.
Yeah, that segment of Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by the black cab industry. Paul Sweeney. Right now we're looking at markets rallying, Nasdaq up 1.2%. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks rising as China's offering a compromise in the trade war with the U.S. It will raise penalties on the theft of intellectual property rights. That's been one of the major sticking points in trade talks. General Electric has hired Carolina Dybeck-Huppe as its next chief financial officer, giving top boss Larry Culp a new partner to help tackle one of the trickiest turnaround efforts in corporate America. She resigned as finance chief at Maersk and will replace Jamie Miller early next year. Internal data from Netflix is suggesting the streaming giant hasn't been hurt yet by the launch of rival services from Disney and Apple. That's according to a person briefed on subscriber information. The number of customers canceling Netflix hasn't accelerated around the debut of those services. And maybe Elon Musk will have the last laugh. He said that Tesla has received 200,000 orders for its Cybertruck. And that's despite having two windows unexpectedly shatter in Thursday's big debut. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers. In-depth analysis.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties. The season to be jolly. Try our Party Time Indian snack selection for only $2.99. And our Party Time mac and cheese bites for just $1.19. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If your ideas challenge the status quo, if you have advised people you had no right advising, if you built companies and lost companies and built them again, if you've been called a pillock, a dreamer, an innovator and a genius, if you thrive in the 11th hour, if you have blown it and completely nailed it in the same day, prepare for your next departure.
Do business right. Travel Virgin Atlantic.
Like all good tradespeople, Ford likes an early start too. That's why our Black Friday has already begun. Enjoy amazing savings across our hard-working range of new commercial vehicles. Save between £2,500 and £9,650 off the recommended retail price. Why wait until the 29th of November, when you can have that Black Friday feeling today? Plus, there's 0% APR representative on Ford Acquire. Search Ford Black Friday. Ford, backbone of Britain.
Exclusions apply. Combined promotions available till 30th of November 2019 at participating dealers. For Ford Acquire, finance subject to status and deposit restrictions apply. Free post Ford credit.
Looking for a great phone to take brilliant photos? Like an incredible iPhone 7 with a 12-megapixel camera? Then look no further than Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. You'll find an iPhone 7 for just $14.49 a month, our lowest ever price. Be quick, this deal ends Sunday, 1st of December. Tesco Mobile, every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £19.75, now £14.49. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase, policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Right, what have we got here?
55-year-old male with the worst case of dropped jaw I've seen, Doctor.
Goodness, his jaw's quite literally dropped onto the floor, hasn't it?
He was trying on the latest hearing aid technology at Specsavers.
What? Specsavers have high-tech hearing aids? That is astonishing.
Apparently, these ones are rechargeable and connect to your smartphone and TV. Doctor. Doctor.
My jaw.
I need some help over here. Get the latest rechargeable Bluetooth hearing aid technology at Specsavers from £1,395 a pair. Ask in store for details.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to speak with Eric Skeens, managing partner of 3 Tree Tech on the telecom business, including 5G. How big will 5G be for consumers? Plus, we're going to speak to Clark Kendall of Kendall Capital Management, get his views on the markets as we look ahead to 2020. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Paul, the major U.S. indices have risen to records again as investors remain attuned to the developments in the U.S.-China trade relationship and are cheering a wave of large merger activity. Miranda Carr, Haitong International China macro strategist, tells Bloomberg China does want a deal, but as usual, the devils are in the details.
Well, like we're getting into a bit like May, where you get very, very close to a final agreement, and then it's the nitty-gritty. It's how do you enforce it? How do you monitor it? Whether you send in monitors from the US to the Chinese market itself, and that's where the risk of the final deal actually falling down arises.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 0.6%, up 18. The Dow's up 0.4%, up 113, and the Nasdaq's up 1.1%, up 96. The 10-year is up 3/32, the yield 1.75%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is little changed at $57.77 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.4% at $14.6440 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.90. The euro $1.10.11. The British pound $1.29.06. Manager, some of the largest investment funds in Canada is favoring European and Asian stocks over North American. Sarah Riopel, the senior portfolio manager at RBC Global Asset, boosted her equity allocation by 2 percentage points to 59% over the past month as she shifts her focus to markets outside the U.S. and Canada. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Last week, AT&T announced that it will begin 5G wireless service for consumers in more than 15 cities in the coming weeks, although we should say this is very much a pilot. They're not expecting to make money, but it raises a question of what the advantage is for telecom companies to be early movers when it comes to the 5G wireless network. Eric Skeens joining us now, co-founder and managing partner for 3 Tree Tech, which is a research company focused on telecoms as well as others. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, is it imperative for these telecom giants to start moving now and getting people used to 5G?
Yes, that's a great question, Lisa, and I appreciate you bringing 3 Tree on. The 5G market, when it comes to enterprises adopting the 5G technology and the solutions, right now there's a lot of different challenges that are coming about that. But AT&T and Verizon have started moving in that direction, and you'll see a significant, and have seen a significant move and shift for these large telecom carriers from the typical wireline technologies and solutions that have been dedicated lines to more in line with 5G and being able to go to market a lot faster. And so as enterprises are starting to adopt this, the big thing for these large organizations is the ability to shape and mold what direction this stuff is going into, or the solutions are going into.
All I know about 5G is I can download movies faster. What's really the business case for the telecom industry investing capital in 5G, consumers investing their money and upgrading their phones to 5G? What's the real business case, do you think?
It's a great question, Paul, and I appreciate that.
Only one for the day, so.
It's your only one, all right. Well, the 5G technology itself allows enterprises themselves. So in the past, when they were deploying locations, branches, they would leverage a technology called MPLS. And MPLS in the telecom world took 45 plus days in order to deploy. And 5G, when we're looking at 5G, you have a deployment time frame of 7 to 10 days, where literally you're used to it with your cell phones or with your smartphones, is the ability to get your phone, you call in, you activate it. It's the exact same thing within business. The difference is 5G will allow for a significant amount of bandwidth to be able to, for those organizations to actually use it as a primary delivery point for data.
When we talk about 5G and the sort of revolutionary advancements that will come on the heels of it, I have to wonder why we're not seeing some of these companies lay out capital expenditure plans. In fact, it's the opposite. You're seeing AT&T cutting back, reducing leverage. You're seeing layoffs in the industry. I'm struggling to pair the idea that there needs to be infrastructure spending with the reality of fiscal prudence.
Yeah.
Can you please try to explain that?
Yeah, and that's a great point. So when you're looking at AT&T and Verizon, or even if you're looking at Comcast has been making a huge push within the mobility market. But within the Verizon and AT&T world, you're seeing them shed a bunch of infrastructure from a wireline perspective. So when you look at, it was a few years back, Verizon had moved a lot of their infrastructure off to Frontier. Because they knew it was a loss leader. They knew the margins were very thin, and it started. You'll see that they're putting a massive push and spend into 5G deployment and building out of the towers and everything of that sort. And you're seeing a lot of organizations that are coming up that are building out towers that are being leased off to Verizon and AT&T. But
let's talk about I'm going to talk about some of these other non-telecom companies, like the tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google. I seem to think that they are thinking about moving more and more into the telecom space. Are we seeing that? Is that a threat to some of the AT&Ts and Verizons of the world?
Yes, it definitely is a huge threat. Their ability, or what they're doing is they're silently buying up a lot of infrastructure on the back end. And one of the things, you see it with Google Fiber at one point, where they were trying to come out with all of their fiber infrastructure out and provide it for free and be a threat to the telecom, the cable companies and everything of that sort. And Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, as they're continuing to build out the compute platform. The compute platform is huge within business, and what they're doing is building out their dark fiber, as well as buying up undersea cables. People don't realize this, but a lot of what you're seeing is from about 2016. This what I call is the new big three within the technology area is buying up all those undersea cables in order to provide fast speeds and to be able to. The other thing is being able to control the amount of data that can go back and forth.
Right.
And so as the enterprises are buying more compute power, all of this cloud solutions are coming about. They're providing it out.
Right. Farther out on the edge.
Yep.
Eric Skeens, thanks so much for joining us. Eric Skeens, co-founder and managing partner of 3 Tree Tech, talking to us about 5G, talking to us about telecom, a competitive space. We're seeing technology companies also looking at it.
Do you know that AT&T shares are up more than 39% year to date?
Yeah, and they've got some challenges with that Time Warner deal, but the market is given the benefit of the doubt. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Paul, Defense Secretary Mark Esper says President Trump gave him a verbal order to ensure a Navy SEAL accused of war crimes in Iraq would stay in the elite force. Esper, speaking to reporters at the Pentagon today, says that's why he announced last night that Chief Petty Officer Edward Gallagher would be allowed to retire with his SEAL Trident pin. Esper also accused Navy Secretary Richard Spencer of secretly offering to rig the Navy disciplinary process for the White House so Gallagher wouldn't lose his Trident. Spencer was forced to resign last night. A federal judge in Washington should decide later today whether former White House counsel Don McGahn will be required to testify in the House impeachment investigation. The Intelligence Committee is working on compiling the weeks of depositions, documents, and public hearings into a report to the House Judiciary Committee. Sources familiar with the Intelligence Committee's plans tell Bloomberg that report could lead to at least 3 articles of impeachment: bribery, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice. Greenhouse gases hit a new record last year. We get more on that from Bloomberg's Amy Morris in Washington.
The World Meteorological Organization Greenhouse Gas Bulletin says the new numbers exceed the average yearly increase of the past decade and is reinforcing damaging weather patterns, including rising temperatures, water stress, sea level rise, and disruption to marine and land ecosystems. It is just one of a series of studies coming out ahead of a United Nations climate change summit next week in Madrid. The WMO says there's no sign of a slowdown in the greenhouse gases concentration in the atmosphere. In Washington, I'm Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobilely impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
The Bloomberg Business.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties. The season to be jolly. Try our Party Time Indian snack selection for only $2.99. And our Party Time mac and cheese bites for just $1.19. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always little on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like 4 reels. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 25th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Looking for a great phone to take brilliant photos, like an incredible iPhone 7 with a 12-megapixel camera? Then look no further than Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. You'll find an iPhone 7 for just $14.49 a month, our lowest ever price. Be quick, this deal ends Sunday, 1st of December. Tesco Mobile, every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £19.75, now £14.49. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Going, gone.
Some things just don't hang around, like a great deal in Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Right now you can get the Samsung Galaxy S10 for just $29.99 a month. But this deal ends Sunday 1st of December. Catch it before it's gone. Tesco Mobile's best ever Black Friday event. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Best ever Black Friday based on range of products in promotion was £35.99, now £29.99. Offer ends 1st of December. 36-month credit agreement, rolling monthly usage agreement, subject to status, phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Along the goal line, scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
From ESPN and the award-winning producers of The Sterling Affairs comes the latest season of 30 for 30 podcasts. 4 brand new stories of espionage.
He wanted this team to be the Barcelona of women's basketball.
Resilience.
I started to scream. I tried to get away.
Corruption.
It's the culture of win at all costs.
And rebirth.
How will we ever rebuild it?
30 for 30 podcasts, season 6. Listen and favorite 30 for 30 podcasts on TuneIn.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Soft Group has launched a long-awaited $3 billion tender offer for WeWork stock. This according to sources who say the offer expires on April 1st. Meanwhile, the S&P and NASDAQ climbed to all-time highs after China said it will tighten intellectual property rules. A move aimed at boosting the chances of a trade deal between the two largest economies. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P 500 is up 0.6%, up 19. The Dow's up just about 0.5%, up 125. And the NASDAQ's up 1.2%, up 99. The 10-year is up 3/32, the yield 1.75%. West Texas Intermediate crude is now dipped 0.2% at 57.69 a barrel, and COMEX gold's down 0.5% at 14.6380 an ounce. The dollar yen 108.94. The euro $1.10.07, and the British pound $1.28.84. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, another risk-on day today in the markets. Some optimism about China trade and what a year it's been in the S&P 500, up 25% year to date. A lot of folks are starting to look forward to 2020 and see about how they should position our portfolio. We can get some good color from our next guest, Clark Kendall, President and CEO of Kendall Capital, joining us on the phone. Clark, thanks so much for joining us. A lot of folks dealt with the pain, experienced the pain of the fourth quarter last year, but then we're more than rewarded by the upside here in 2019. Again, the S&P up about 25% year to date. What are your thoughts for the remainder of the year and heading into 2020?
Yeah, so far this has been a great year. We are the investment managers for the middle class millionaire in the Washington D.C. area. I think we've got to try to get away from just predicting the market, but looking for opportunities within the market.
Okay, so where do you see opportunities?
Well, as I always say, sometimes it's easiest to know where not to invest. I think the 10-year Treasury at 1.9 is not attractive to me. The IPOs that have come to market this year have come to market because they're starving for cash. On the opposite side of the coin, and on top of that, the Nifty 50, the top 50 stocks of the S&P, are at huge valuations. I think the other 450 stocks create great opportunities in today's market.
Are there certain sectors, Clark, that you think maybe have been left behind? Some people were suggesting maybe some international stocks, maybe even go on the risk curve for emerging markets. What are your thoughts on where there might be some value?
I think there's some great value. I like to look at things of price to cash flow. I think the fact that Schwab's buying TD Ameritrade is a great example of a company looking in that 450 looking for cash flow. The fact that Walgreens is looking to go private. Why are they looking to go private? Because the cash flow is so strong. So I think there's some great companies out there in that 450 where the cash flow is quite strong.
So going into 2020, a lot of people are expecting a bit of a resurgence in economic prospects, at least in the first half of the year, and then for that to sour in the second half. That seems to be the consensus. What are you advising your clients do heading into next year?
Well, I think kind of predicting how fast the GDP will grow, where interest rates will go, short term, that's very hard to predict. Jeremy Powell basically pointed out we're in a good spot. We have low inflation, we have low interest rates, we have low GDP, we have low unemployment, and I think we take advantage of that. We look at things like Norwegian Cruise Line's a great example of a company having strong cash flow with low unemployment. People, it's a relatively cheap vacation. Things like United Rental. I mean, the economy's still growing, and they have a great profit margin, great cash flow. So I think continues to be great opportunities in our economy.
So, Clark, one of the areas that has really been the driver, both on the downside, if you think about the fourth quarter of last year, then the upside this year has been technology, and particularly some of the FANG stocks. Is that a group that is attractive to you, or do you think it's just too rich?
I think we need to be very cautious with the FANG stocks and all the stocks in the Nifty 50. We remember at the turn of the century, everyone at the turn of the century had Cisco and Dell and Qualcomm in their portfolios. Qualcomm has, revenue and earnings are up 17 times, yet the stock price is two-thirds the value it was 19 years ago. So I think we need to be cautious, and that's why I'm saying go back to the fundamentals, price to cash flow. Everyone's indexing, but I think there's great opportunities for the portfolio managers that pay attention to valuations.
Clark Kendall, thank you so much for being with us. Clark Kendall, President and Chief Executive Officer of Kendall Capital, joining us from Maryland. And as we head into the Thanksgiving lull of the week, Paul, let's talk about one thing that many people may be turning to, and that's Disney Plus, which rolled out November 12th. And I'm wondering, have you had a chance to check it out?
I have. It's, and I think the consensus I'm hearing from a lot of consumers is that if you have kids, it's almost a must-have. When you think about all the content that they have on there, from the traditional Disney animation to obviously the Pixar and all that stuff.
I'm laughing because I'm just thinking about the must-have. I'm just thinking about a week out of school and the kids going haywire and it's raining outside and you're just saying, oh my God, something's got to give. Carry on.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really got that tremendous amount of content. It doesn't have a lot. What the feedback I'm hearing also doesn't have necessarily a lot for adults, unless you're a huge Star Trek fan or something like that. But that's where in the Disney portfolio of streaming services, they've got Hulu, and for them, Hulu, which they majority own, that's I think going to be their product to really target the adult market. And then of course the third streaming service that Disney has is ESPN Plus to go after the folks that wanted to stream sports. So if you look at Disney's streaming portfolio of Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus, you can make a really strong argument that they're in a good position, to compete in what seems to be an ever, more competitive part of the market.
Yeah, and if the Frozen 2 sales were any indication, definitely still a lot of people looking to entertain their children.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the stock is up 36% year to date, and that's even though the company has come out and said that Disney Plus is not going to be profitable for another 4 or 5 years, and it's rare that you see, and it's going to cost billions of dollars, but it's rare that you see a company that's not a tech company kind of get that pass from the marketplace.
Indeed. Meanwhile, in markets, we should note we are seeing some new record highs, certainly on the NASDAQ and the S&P, both reaching all-time highs. A lot of people still attributing this to the IP rhetoric out of China, basically China coming out saying that they are going to crack down on intellectual property theft. And, Henrietta Trey's from Veda Partners was really brilliant on this, basically saying, we don't know a lot of details. Enforcement still is key. All of those caveats stand. That said, typically China will choose to announce something ahead of any deal agreement announced to get ahead of it and to basically show that they are doing it on their own volition and not necessarily under pressure from President Trump. And that in and of itself is significant that this is happening now.
It is. And I think as we get closer and closer to that December 15th tariff, discussion and the incremental tariffs going on, it's going to get incrementally more important, i.e. the news about a China trade deal. You can see this really going to have presumably a continued very strong impact on the market in both ways, good and bad. But I think the expectation is building that a phase one type of deal is certainly something that could be achieved, and that more than anything else has really been supporting the markets here over the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, that said, we're not necessarily seeing that reflation hope still being baked into the markets. We're seeing a 9th straight day of yield curve flattening. That is the gap between 2-year and 10-year Treasury yields declining for the 9th straight session. That is the longest stretch since November 2015. And it comes as you see also other measures of inflation expectations come down, raising some concerns, frankly, for the Federal Reserve, which has been watching this particular curve, which did invert and was inverted as recently as August. Something to watch as we see U.S. stocks climb to all-time highs here on the hope of some sort of trade deal. You're seeing a bit of optimism tempered by bonds. I'm Lisa Abramowitz, along with my co-host and colleague Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listings. They like new development.
At Lidl, we're big on those little reasons to be jolly. Like our delicious Favorina all-butter mini Stollen Bites for just $1.99. And 6 deluxe mince pies for just $1.35. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Café Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 25th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Did you really get those trainers half price?
Yeah, nice, right? From Zalando. They have new deals every day for Cyber Week.
This is an express service to a whole week of cyber deals, calling out footwear, sportswear, winter looks, designer styles, and more.
Cyber Week at Zalando. Save up to 70% on your favourite styles. Zalando. Free to be.
Dell's biggest Black Friday ever is on. Save up to £700 on Windows 10 laptops and desktops, plus up to 50% off across our award-winning monitors, all with free delivery. Call 0800 085 4878 to talk to a Dell advisor today. That's 0800 085 4878. Or visit dell.co.uk/SB deals for details on the best offers in Dell's biggest Black Friday ever. Limited time online offer. Hurry while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters in New York to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, I'm David Weston. Welcome to Balance of Power. This is where the world of politics meets the world of business. On the brief today, Bill Ferry's from Washington on dramatic Hong Kong elections over the weekend. Chief Washington correspondent Kevin Cirilli on what comes next in the impeachment proceeding. And from London, Jess Schenkelman on the Tory election manifesto. So Bill, let's start with you. As I say, pretty dramatic, both in the result but also in the turnout over in Hong Kong.
Exactly. I think turnout more than double in these Hong Kong local elections, with about 85% of the seats in the local district councils going towards basically candidates that have supported the protesters. So a very strong rebuke of Beijing here, and the kind of thing that's a warning shot to the U.S. and the Trump administration, which has really tried to toe a fine line between saying it supports pro-democracy protesters, but it also wants to keep China on its side for those all-important trade negotiations that are still continuing.
Bill, is it all possible there's a little bit of a silver lining in this for Beijing in this sense? It releases some of the pressure. It says there's another way to protest. You don't have to go to the streets and get tear gas. You can actually vote.
Right, it does, and it'll be interesting to see. Carrie Lam has said she will work with those newly elected council members, that she will listen to their points of view and take that into account when she's carrying out her policies. One of the easy steps to take at this point would be to go forward with an independent inquiry into some of the police actions. That's something even pro-Beijing supporters in Hong Kong have started calling for. So that would be one easy way to show that she's heard this message that the elections have delivered.
You mentioned the capital of the United States response to what's going on in Hong Kong. Where are we with legislation went through the Congress? President Trump was saying he might sign it, might not. It depends on the trade negotiations. Where is it exactly?
Well, the president has about 10 days to decide whether he wants to sign it or veto it. I think that expires on December 4th. So late or middle of next week or so. If he doesn't sign it, it becomes law with or without his signature. He could still use the time in between to veto it. So that's something we're looking for. But at this point, it's sitting on the president's desk waiting for him to make a decision.
Bill, one final thought on Turkey, because I understand they're actually testing those S-400 Russian missiles now. That's not good news for President Trump.
It's not good news for President Trump, who just met with President Erdogan just in the last couple weeks here. It's certainly going to give fuel to congressional efforts to sanction Turkey more stringently in the coming weeks.
Okay, Bill Ferris, thank you so much for reporting from Washington. Let's stay in Washington now with our chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli. And let's talk about impeachment. It's the Thanksgiving week, but as I understand it, they're not taking off from impeachment necessarily.
No, they're not. In fact, we're expecting new transcripts to be released sometime in the next 24 hours. We're also expecting a district judge to rule sometime this afternoon whether or not White House Special Counsel Don McGahn is going to have to comply with congressional subpoenas. Meanwhile, back on Capitol Hill, Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, key ally of President Trump's, has said that he is opening up a congressional investigation into Hunter Biden. And beyond that, the House Intelligence Committee is beginning to piece together a report controlled by the Democrats as to whether or not that could be submitted to potentially have articles of impeachment.
But still, Kevin, is there any doubt about whether it's going to come out?
No. Look, I think that the expectation is that there's going to be articles of impeachment, and the calculus in the Senate is that the Republicans controlling the Senate would not break with the White House.
Okay, Kevin, what we're watching right now is something we've never seen in politics, which is an impeachment inquiry going on at the same time as a presidential election. Let's talk about the presidential election. Big news. Our boss, Michael Bloomberg, said he's going to officially run. Who's that going to affect the most among the Democratic field?
Unclear. A Morning Consult poll within the past couple of weeks said that the former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg is polling in single digits as a lower-tier candidate. Progressives, top-tier candidates, including Senator Bernie Sanders as well as Senators Elizabeth Warren, have largely criticized this announcement, saying that he is trying to buy the election. Meanwhile, over the weekend, another frontrunner, former Vice President Joe Biden, picking up the key endorsement of former Iowa Governor Vislak, a prominent Democrat in the Hawkeye state, the Biden campaign saying that could show some support. A crowded field, and Biden very much still ahead nationally, with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg still closing out the top-tier candidates.
Okay, Kevin, thank you so very much. And a disclaimer, of course, Michael R. Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP. That is the parent company of Bloomberg News. Now we're going to go to London and Jess Schenkelman, because we had a Tory manifesto out over the weekend. What did we learn from it, Jess?
Well, what we learned is that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, is playing it safe. The polls at the moment are showing that he's on course to get a majority at the 12th of December election. So the manifesto they put out last night was very small c conservative. It didn't contain many radical announcements. It focused on getting Brexit done and a big promise for 50,000 new nurses in the National Health Service. He's trying to avoid the mistakes of his predecessor, Theresa May, in the 2017 election. It was the manifesto that was her undoing, her campaign undoing. At the beginning of the election, she was polling similar to what he is polling now. So he's trying to take very careful steps and not break this fragile lead that he has.
Jess, what does it tell us about Brexit? Because he says, listen, if you give me a Conservative majority in Parliament, then I'll get it done in a soft way. But what about the possibility of a hard Brexit? Is it still out there?
Well, Boris Johnson has his negotiating tactic previously, earlier this year, kept a hard Brexit on the table, and he argues that that strategy helped him to get a better deal. And there's no reason why he wouldn't repeat that again. As you know, now he has this withdrawal agreement, the divorce deal that he has to get passed. He now has to, once they've got that through Parliament, which is what he hopes to do, he then has to get a longer term, a future trading relationship with the EU. So even once he's got that divorce deal passed, hopefully for him by the end of January, there's still quite a long way to go, and a no-deal Brexit does remain on the table.
Jess, thank you so very much. That's Jess Shankelman reporting from London. And now it's time for a check on the markets and how they're reacting to all the things we're talking about today. Joining us now is Abigail Doolittle. So are they reacting?
I don't think we're seeing too much of a reaction to the headlines that you were just discussing. I think what we're seeing more is investors, traders, portfolio managers wanting to make up for last year, which turned out to be a bad year. As you were pointing out earlier when we were talking before going on, lots of liquidity out there. It needs a home. But it also seems to be a classic case of climbing the wall of worry at this point, because the data's not that great. Last week, industrial production came out at a year low. Economic data around the world, not great. The earnings season that we just had, it was actually an earnings recession. Now, there's hopes that the next earnings season this fourth quarter won't be so bad. So investors sort of playing ahead into all of that. But at this point, especially considering valuation, we don't have a trade deal. It's interesting to see that we have record highs, but we also have bonds rallying. Tells you some investors are a little nervous.
If macro isn't pointing us in one particular direction, are people picking stocks more carefully? Because we have had some divergence, for example, in retail, about some retailers doing really well, some not so much.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. The correlation, the macro correlations between stocks and sectors certainly breaking down. So that favors individual stock pickers, those who go after fundamentals. What you're talking about in retail, of course, is very interesting because Kohl's did horribly. Macy's not so great. On the other hand, we had the likes of Lowe's doing very well. Today, we have lots of individual movers. Just take a look at this. Tiffany popping, of course, on that LVMH deal. We also have TD Ameritrade, that $26 billion deal. Tesla, it's hard to get away from that Tesla truck, but those shares are popping. So it's just interesting to see all these individual stocks moving to some degree. But it tells you that investors are really going to have to get smart, sharpen the pencils, and do the fundamental work, that if there's just not one macro trade at this point that investors are focusing on. Although it does seem, again, investors hoping for just sort of a end-of-the-year tailwind.
But the Tesla truck doing well, despite the fact that the windows do break.
Oh, it's unbelievable. That truck is unbelievable.
Okay, many thanks to Abigail Doolittle for that report on the markets. And now we're going to turn to Mark Crumpton. He's here with Bloomberg First Word News.
David, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam says she will, quote, seriously reflect on a stunning landslide victory by pro-democracy candidates in the territory's local election. The outcome was a rebuke of how she's handled violent protests that have divided the semi-autonomous Chinese territory. As we've been reporting, pro-democracy candidates swept nearly 90% of local district seats, forcing Beijing to rethink how it handles the unrest. Colombia is facing a fifth day of demonstrations as unions and student groups try to maintain pressure on President Ivan Duque over issues including education and corruption. It's the latest Andean nation to face mass protests. In recent weeks, anti-government demonstrations forced the governments of Ecuador and Chile to roll back austerity measures and help drive Bolivian President Evo Morales out of office. A shakeup at the Pentagon. Navy Secretary Richard Spencer has been ousted in a controversy over a Navy SEAL accused of war crimes. Defense Secretary Mark Esper learned that Spencer had privately approached the White House about a settlement for the SEAL that was at odds with his public position on the matter. President Trump has wanted to grant the SEAL clemency. Rudy Giuliani discussed representing a state-owned Ukrainian bank in a legal dispute this summer, even while publicly pressing Ukraine on behalf of President Trump. The bank asked Giuliani to assist in its suit. That's despite the dispute involving an entity already under federal investigation here in the U.S. Giuliani ultimately declined the case. Global news 24 hours a day on air and at TikTok on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. Coming up, Adam Schiff says he is not waiting on the White House. Democrats are pushing forward with impeachment despite the legal battles that have kept some of the biggest names from testifying. We ask our political panel about what comes next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
You're not supposed to begin the race before the start.
1 in 10 Londoners surveyed said they'll give more to charity in the next 12 months. Are you one of them? At CAF, we help generous people like you support their favourite charities by making giving simple. And we provide charities with the tools they need to perform at their best. So together, we can make a bigger difference for our communities. We're a charity and a champion for better giving. We are CAF, and we make giving count. Visit cafonline.org to find out more.
At Lidl, we're big on those little reasons to be jolly. Like our delicious Favorina all butter mini Stollen bites for just $1.99. And 6 deluxe mince pies for just $1.35. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like for reals. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 25th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Did you know that at Boots.com, there are thousands of amazing gifts to choose from? And if you order online, they can be delivered to the boots of your choice for collection. So gift like you get them at the fantastical choice of thousands of gifts to order and collect boutique. Charges may apply. See Boots.com for details.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. For exclusive Black Friday offers on selected video doorbells and cameras, visit ring.com and major retailers.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Drive into the in-laws' house for Thanksgiving? Having a long airport layover on your way home? Or maybe you're camping out on Black Friday in quest of the deal of the season. Whatever the case, ease the pain and make it a long weekend to remember with TuneIn. And for those basting the turkey at home, we've got great cooking podcasts for prepping the perfect turkey.
I have water with unflavored powdered gelatin, bun pan.
At home or on the move, soundtrack your Thanksgiving with TuneIn.
Far wing elevates, triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man bleeds for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
That call with President Zelensky, that's kind of a hard thing to say, isn't it?
Sure, but given all of the evidence that we've seen so far of how moderate, you got Mike Turner or Will Hurd on the Intelligence Committee who have both basically come out and said that they're not going to support it. I think the likelihood of any Republicans voting on the floor for articles of impeachment is extremely low. I would put the number at maybe 1 or 2 at most. You've seen comments from someone like Francis Rooney from Florida. He came out talking about how he was concerned about this, and then the next day announced that he's not running for re-election. The reality is there are not a lot of House Republicans in office at this point after the last election where we lost a lot of moderate seats. There are not a lot of House Republicans who are in those middle battleground states, and the ones that are there really have not given you any reason to believe that they're going to break with the president. The president has a firm grip both over the base of the party, but also this conference. And in my experience being there, the House Republican Conference loves to work together as a team. They don't allow a lot of room for dissent, and so I don't expect a whole lot of Republicans to vote for it, if any.
So, David, there are other things going on than just impeachment. There's also the nation's business, including the USMCA, that successor to NAFTA, and whether it's going to get passed or not. There's a lot of pressure, I think, on the Democrats, it's fair to say, to get that thing done for a lot of different quarters. We talked on Friday, actually, with Adam Smith, the congressman, who is the chair of the House Armed Services Committee, and this is what he said.
There are some legitimate differences of opinion. Making sure that we enforce labor and environmental standards as aggressively as we enforce business standards and international agreements, incredibly important. And we're trying to drive a hard bargain on that, but I think we will get there.
So he says he thinks we will get there, David. Do you think that the Democrats will get this thing done?
Yeah, I think if they're dealing with people on the other side of the table who are reasonable and want to get a deal done, they will. I'm reminded of when I worked in the White House for President Clinton. I was there during impeachment, and we led a sort of dual existence. Sometimes we'd be talking about what's going on in impeachment, and then we'd pivot to talking about Social Security and Medicare and doing the nation's business. And guess what? President Clinton got a number of bills enacted into law during the impeachment proceeding. Now, I think he was a political genius, and I don't think that of Donald Trump, but so what? It's still possible. It's possible that even in the context of Congress focusing on impeachment, it can still walk and chew gum at the same time and get things done. There's certainly a motivation to do that on both sides. You've got several very vulnerable Republicans in the Senate right now. Cory Gardner in Colorado. You've got similar races in Maine and in North Carolina. And the Republicans have to be able to show constituents in those states that they're capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. And by the way, to go to my colleague's earlier point about the unity of the Republican caucus, I frankly think that Senator McConnell would be unwise to try to force somebody like Cory Gardner to toe the party line. They're going to lose Colorado. However, I think that is the Republican way. Everybody fall in line, and I think they are going to suffer losses as a result in the Senate.
So we're talking with Brendan Buck and David Goodfriend, our political panel here. Brendan, let's go over to the Republican side and ask about the possible effects on President Trump's re-election campaign. Let's assume there are articles of impeachment voted out of the House, which a lot of people think there will be, and in fact there is an acquittal in the Senate. Does that make him weaker or stronger going into 2020?
Well, you have to look at the type of election that they're running, and it's clearly a base election. And then if that's the type of campaign they're going to run, I don't know that it hurts him too much. What this does is it allows him to rally the base, not only to say, they've been targeting me from the get-go, that they've been out to get me from the start, but so what you're talking about on the trade agreement, to make the argument that they are so maniacally focused on impeachment that they're not focusing on the issues that you really care about. whether it's trade or drug prices or a whole host of things that are actually larger priorities if you look at polling to the American people. And so I think he'll have a lot of opportunity to use this to his advantage. I certainly think that if he gets acquitted, he will claim vindication. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but that's the way he's going to use it. I certainly think that there are plenty of opportunities here, whether it extends from the president all the way down ballot in these House races, where you're already seeing it. House Republicans are hammering these moderate Democrats for not focusing on the things that voters actually care about.
So, David Goodfriend, over on the Democratic side, we can't talk about the 2020 election today without talking about what happened yesterday with Mike Bloomberg, our boss, entering the race. How does that scramble the Democratic field from your point of view?
Well, first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say I hope every one of the 2,700 reporters and analysts at Bloomberg feels completely at liberty to write and research and say whatever they want about Mike Bloomberg. That's the way to run a journalistic enterprise.
But David, that's why I asked the question.
Do this.
That's why I asked the question.
I understand. So I think that what Mike Bloomberg has done is force the Democratic Party to bring into even greater relief. Are we the party of wealth and privilege or corporate interests, or are we the party of the everyman, the every person, and the worker, and the sort of Biden-Warren split, if you will? I think the presence of Mike Bloomberg in the race is an indicator of perceived weakness on the part of Joe Biden. We'll see in Iowa when the voting actually starts if that perception is real or not. But I also have to commend Mr. Bloomberg for doing one thing that I think is very, very productive, and that is he has stated an intent, his campaign has stated an intent to spend their time and money focusing on criticizing President Trump in key states, not on internecine warfare between other Democrats. That's extremely important and extremely helpful. And what it means is you're getting real resources put behind the real question in this election. There's only one question. Do you want 4 more years of Donald Trump or not? That's the question of this election. And he's bringing that into great relief, and I think that's wonderful.
So, Brendan, one last thought from your side. Is the entering of Michael Bloomberg really an indication of the weakness of the field? Because a lot of people, when they're polled, think the field as it is right now before Mike Bloomberg was pretty good.
It certainly shows that he thinks Joe Biden is a weak, I don't know if you call him a front runner, but a weak, moderate front runner. And that's clearly the lane that he is trying to get into. To be successful, though, he's going to have to really rewrite the playbook of how these things work. He's already said he's not going to play in the early states, which we've really never seen anybody wait until after the early states to be successful. And he's not going to be able to get on the debate stage. That's going to be really hard to do. So we'll see, if the resources he has is enough to overcome that.
Okay, many thanks to our panel of Brendan Buck and David Goodfriend, both down in Washington. And a disclaimer now, Michael R. Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
To understand the latest developments in tech, business, and finance, talk to the best.
Tell me about the collaborations.
It also helps to be the best.
What are the real ethical dilemmas here?
Carol Masser.
Is there a data share at all that goes on between these companies?
Jason Kelly.
How do you go about getting inside a story like this?
Bloomberg Business Week. Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It is time now for the stock of the hour. Teva Pharmaceutical is trading at its highest level since May, jumping about 5% today on reports that the company is in talks with the Justice Department to resolve that criminal antitrust probe. And Kayleen Lyons is here with more. So it's a price-fixing thing that they've been looking into, as far as we know.
And they've been looking into it for a very long time, since back in 2014. So this is essentially more than 5 years that this has gone on. And the allegations, as you said, are that the companies essentially got together to kind of split up the market so that they could keep prices high, and they say that the allegations are that it's been very damaging to patients and other customers of these generic drugs, which make up about 90% of the entire drug market. Now, it hasn't resulted in any criminal charges against any major companies as of yet. The Justice Department has a lot of issues with finding credible witnesses who are willing to come forward, and the statute of limitations for a lot of these allegations is actually going to be up next year, in which case this would move to civil. So the clock is ticking. So now there may be more incentive for an agreement. There's reports that Teva and some of these other companies are in talks with the DOJ. Among what they're discussing would be a deferred prosecution. So essentially they admit to some of it, may have to pay a fine, they cooperate with the investigation, but they don't get indicted. And that's actually key for the likes of Teva, because they could continue to work with the government programs like Medicaid, et cetera. And the federal officials actually have an incentive here too, because if you do file criminal charges, that could bar them from working with Medicaid, and then you take more competition out of the market and could inadvertently raise prices, which is exactly what they're trying to avoid.
And on top of all, there's treble damages under civil law in the United States. And so if they were found guilty of price fixing, they'd have treble damages. Plus, there's other legal problems they have.
Yeah, it's not just the DOJ, the criminal probe. They've also facing a lawsuit from 48 states, D.C., 4 U.S. territories, and that's a civil allegation. And actually, even if they do settle with the DOJ, reach some kind of agreement with federal officials, that could actually boost the civil case here should they admit any wrongdoing. Plus, even outside of generic drug pricing, you also have the opioid epidemic, which Teva has been front, and there's so many potential liabilities with that. So there's a lot of legal issues here.
But today's a good day for Teva. So far. Okay. Many thanks to Bloomberg's Kaylee Lyons. Up next, China has summoned the U.S. ambassador over what it calls interference in Hong Kong. We're going to speak with former U.S. ambassador to China, Max Baucus. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. A record-breaking day on Wall Street. All three averages touched record highs before the Dow pulled back somewhat. Still, all three are up about 0.4 to 1 2/10%. The Dow adding 113, the Nasdaq 101, the S&P 19. There are a couple of things behind the boost. First, China says it will tighten penalties for violations of intellectual property rules. That's an issue that's been key for a trade deal between the U.S. and China. And then there are what seems like myriad mergers. Charles Schwab going to buy TD Ameritrade, the parent company of Louis Vuitton, buying Tiffany. Word that Viagogo is buying eBay. StubHub ticket-selling service saw eBay shares post their biggest jump since the middle of July. And the CBS-Viacom merger is now set to close next week. McDonald's shares are down 0.6%. That on word the company is paying $26 million to settle a class action lawsuit that charged wage theft. McDonald's denies any wrongdoing. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
You don't usually find the titans of finance, business, and politics sitting around together.
There's been this transfer of royal power and royal prerogative.
But amazingly, they're nearly all here every weekday.
Let's talk about their data. What are you looking for?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
So where does the circuit breaker come from?
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
He's got to respond, doesn't he?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we're going to go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, China's trying to address one of the sticking points in trade talks with the United States. Beijing will raise the penalties on intellectual property theft. China also will look into lowering the thresholds for criminal punishments for those who steal IP. The impeachment process has reached the decision stage. House Democrats are starting to compress weeks of depositions, documents, and testimony into a report. It's almost certain to result in articles of impeachment against President Trump. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff hasn't ruled out more hearings or other areas of investigation. The president's preparing to pour hundreds of millions of dollars into Florida next year. Changes in demographics and voting laws have put the linchpin state up for grabs. Democrats have made potentially major inroads since the president won the state handily in 2016. But Republicans plan to make the race expensive. Bloomberg's learned the Trump campaign plans to spend more than $200 million in Florida. Former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg plans to take an untested path in the presidential race. Bloomberg announced he's formally entered the run for the Democratic nomination. He will skip the early test in Iowa and New Hampshire, instead focusing on California and other states voting on Super Tuesday next March. Michael Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks very much, Mark. Hong Kong voters have handed an overwhelming victory to pro-democracy candidates in local elections over the weekend, and they did it in record numbers. To explain what this could mean for Hong Kong and, for that matter, for Beijing as well, welcome now on the telephone Max Baucus. He's former U.S. ambassador to China and also former chair of the Senate Finance Committee. So, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. Give us a sense from your point of view of how important these elections were. I understand they were local district elections, but still, it's a pretty remarkable result.
Yes, it is. The protesters got a couple of victories. One, a passage of the Rubio bill, which revokes special status for Hong Kong if certain conditions are met. Second, the local elections. It is local. It's not LegCo. That's not the legislative body, which still is basically controlled by pro-Beijing members. But still, the local elections indicate that people are very upset with the management of Hong Kong by the Hong Kong government, pushed by Beijing, and so that's going to force Beijing and force the Hong Kong government to recalibrate.
Well, it's interesting. As I understand it, this is the one election they have where there's universal suffrage. So it is an indication, I guess, of where the popular sentiment is, maybe the most accurate representation we've had. At the same time, could it relieve some of the pressure for Beijing? That is to say, if you're a protester, if you're part of the pro-democracy movement, you now have another way to make your views known.
You do, and regrettably, during the handover back in '97, Hong Kong was promised by China to move toward universal suffrage. They made that promise a couple, 3 times, and they kept being put off year after year, and China has not come through with it. So I don't think you'll see universal suffrage in the sense that we Americans understand it. But still, this is an indication that Beijing's going to have to slow down a little bit as they try to bring Hong Kong into the mainland China fold. And Carrie Lam, the chief executive, has got some problems on her hand. She basically wants to help the demonstrators, but she doesn't want to do it in a way that's going to upset Beijing. I was talking to her. I've been to Hong Kong several times the last couple of months, in mainland China the last couple of months. And I was talking to Carrie Lam about 2 months ago, and she looked at me and she said, it's tough serving two masters. She's got to serve Beijing, but she also wants to serve the people. But basically, it's Beijing that controls.
So let's talk about Beijing just for a moment. You were our U.S. ambassador, of course, to Beijing. Just today, we received word that our current U.S. ambassador has been summoned in by the Chinese government, I guess to be read the riot act about what they claim is interference in Hong Kong. Did you ever get summoned in? What's the significance of that action?
Oh, yeah. Middle of the night, I got summoned three times. It's important. The host country is expressing its views. It's very upset with what the United States has done. In this case, I'm sure it's the action passed by both the House and the Senate, potentially revoking special status for Hong Kong. Beijing doesn't like that one bit, and it has some effect, but basically it does not really determine what the next course is going to be.
So you said you met with Carrie Lam in the last couple of months when you were over there. Yeah. Did you get a sense from her about what she thought she could do to really bring this to a positive conclusion?
She's in a tough spot. I asked her if she's going to run for another term. She said, "Oh, no. I'm not going to run for another term. I don't even want to continue this current term." She's a bureaucrat. She's very sympathetic with the people of Hong Kong. She grew up as a social service worker. She helped poor people in Hong Kong. She did a very good job with it. And I think that's partly why the Beijing government tapped her to be the chief executive. She cares. She cares a lot. But she's caught. She's caught between Beijing and the desire to do what's right for the people of Hong Kong.
It must be the case that Beijing wants her to be there at this point. They would make actions otherwise if it were true. Why does Beijing want her there, do you think?
Well, she is a woman. She is a bureaucrat. That is, she came up through the government. She was popular before she became chief executive, and after that, who's to replace her? If Beijing wants to replace her, they will replace her with somebody who's just as beholden to Beijing. So she will not continue her current term, but her replacement will be probably just as pro-Beijing.
So, Mr. Ambassador, let me ask you at the same time about the trade negotiations going on, because we've just had word from China that they are going to be willing to really toughen up their intellectual property provisions, something you and I have talked about on more than one occasion. At the same time, we have some people who say, whatever China agrees to, they often don't follow through on their trade agreement. Let's play something that Rick Scott, the senator from Florida, said to us recently.
Maybe they'll change. I don't believe they're going to change. They've not given us any evidence they're going to change. Let's remember, this also, President Xi committed to some terms of a contract agreement earlier this year and then changed his mind. So it's consistent for Communist China. They talk a big game. They never comply.
So we're talking with this former ambassador to Beijing, Max Baucus. So, Mr. Ambassador, was that your experience with the Chinese government? Do they follow through on their trade agreements? I know that some people say they never really followed through with all the WTO commitments.
Well, the truth is somewhere in between. When I was over there, I learned pretty quickly something that's pretty corny. I came up with what I call my 3 Ps. With the Chinese, you got to be patient, you got to be positive, and you got to be persistent. You stick with it in a positive way, and after a while, you finally do get results. The big difference between the U.S. and China is clear. There's no independent judiciary in China. There's no way to enforce China to live up to their word. There is in the U.S., but not in China. So you got to keep working with China. You have to develop relationships with the Chinese. Be positive, keep working at it. You got to stand your own ground. You can't let yourself be bullied by China, but you got to keep pushing, be persistent in a very positive way, and gradually you get results.
Ambassador Baucus, at the same time that we have this ongoing China trade dispute, we also are coming at China on Hong Kong, but also with the Uyghurs out in the West. Is it possible to pursue both of those at the same time? We talked with Senator Ben Cardin recently. This is what he said about both pursuing human rights issues and trade. This is what he said.
You can't run away from what makes America the great nation it is, and that is standing up for human rights and democracy. So we can do both. We can work out the trade problems with China, as well as we're making sure they comply with the commitment they gave to the people of Hong Kong.
Mr. Ambassador, is that your experience? Can Beijing really segment those two things and deal with the human rights issues of the United States on the one hand and trade on the other without getting the two put together?
Well, frankly, it's the United States, which is linking everything together. We're not segmenting. We're linking, as we have in the past. And China has too, to some degree. Basically, Xinjiang, the Uyghurs, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Tibet, are all neuralgic for President Xi. He will not let anything happen in any of those four geographic areas where he loses control. That is so important to him. In Xinjiang, Western China, he's trying to Hanify that province. That is, he's bringing Han Chinese in to try to dilute the Uyghur population. He's also controlling the Uyghurs there in a very, very, terrible way. Because he wants control. He's a control freak. He doesn't want any group to get any head of steam up where that begins to question his legitimacy. Now, we can do what we can with the Uyghurs. Frankly, we don't have much leverage with the Uyghurs, not that I can tell anyway. We can stand up and say, oh, yes, we Americans, we stand up for freedom and democracy, and we do. And people in China do see that. People do see that, the Chinese people see that America is the beacon still on the hill. They like that. But they know they're not going to change China very much. At the same time, they want to keep working, improve their livelihood, get better jobs, put businesses together, and run their lives the way they want to run it, the way they know it.
Okay, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much. Always a treat to have you with us. That's Max Baucus. He's former U.S. Ambassador to China and also former chairman of the Senate Finance Committee. Coming up here, he's known in Washington as a fierce conservative. But in his new book, he says that the term has gotten applied to all sorts of things that aren't really all that conservative. Former Senator Jim DeMint joins us next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
At Lidl, we're big on all those Christmas parties. The season to be jolly. Try our Party Time Indian snack selection for only $2.99. And our Party Time mac and cheese bites for just $1.19. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited, like 4 reels. That means you can scroll and scroll and scroll through all the Black Friday deals.
Because we have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Wow, so many savings.
Our Black Friday deals are now on. Save up to £480. Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data. Savings on selected phones on 24-month contracts. Ends 5th of December. Terms apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
If you're planning on driving this weekend, expect delays on the A406 North Circular Road. There'll be road closures between Tottenham and Edmonton from 10 p.m. on Friday the 22nd of November to 5 a.m. on Monday the 25th of November, while we carry out essential maintenance and repairs. All roads in the surrounding area will be extremely busy, so please allow more time for your journey and expect delays in the area. Plan ahead and check alternative routes at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Did you know that at Boots.com, there are thousands of amazing gifts to choose from? And if you order online, they can be delivered to the boots of your choice for collection. So gift like you get them at the fantastical choice of thousands of gifts to order and collect boutique. Charges may apply. See Boots.com for details.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
The swagger of a perfect dunk. The rush of a three made from all the way downtown. The adrenaline surge of great defense. Can you feel the goosebumps yet? There's nothing like live NBA and nothing like listening live on TuneIn.
Giannis down the lane to the rim, throwing right corner three, another one.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season, so you can be there when it matters most. Never miss the action as it happens. Hear the ball you love. Hear it live on TuneIn. Search NBA Today to start listening.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line. Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff. Hey NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
At home or on the go, stay up to date on the latest news and political trends with Fox's full lineup of shows. Plus, when news breaks, Fox has you covered with live updates and expert analysis on the biggest developing stories. Listen to Fox News Talk anytime on TuneIn.
Surprised to hear that one of the tenets of conservatism is celebrating and protecting our differences.
So let's talk about some specifics here and how you would apply the conservative versus the progressive label of things. And I want to specifically look at civil rights, because you talk, actually, you quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in your book. But let's talk about Brown against Board of Education, because we tend to think of conservatism as being, let's not change too much. Let's stick with traditions. Well, certainly the segregation between black and white in the public schools was a firm tradition, and it did create some division. Do you think it was rightly decided? Would Brown against Board of Education be decided the same way today?
Well, we should not have segregation based on race. It was an injustice. It was a contradiction to our Constitution and the original values in this country. And one of the points we make in the book, David, is, we have not completely fulfilled all of the ideas in the Constitution. Martin Luther King referred to it as a promissory note. And so the tension today is throwing the whole thing out and saying it was written by a bunch of bigots, or understanding what parts of it have made America the greatest country in the world, and also identifying the things that we're not doing well. And that's the whole idea as we move forward, is let's take those things that work and move them into the future. But if it's not working, if it's not just, if it's not fair, then let's throw it out.
We're talking with former Senator Jim DeMint. He's now written a great book called Conservatism, What to Keep. And I want to talk about tribalism, because there's a lot of division, as you focus on in the book, a division in the country right now. And yet you say we should have really a lot of decentralized government, that we should delegate a lot, there should be a lot of individualism. How can you preserve that decentralization without it turning into a lot of tribes bickering with one another, which it feels some days, at least, like we have in this country right now?
Well, tribalism, as it's reflected in more the political sphere than civil society. If you look again at people go to school together, they work together, they play sports together, they socialize together, and they tend to throw out the differences and enjoy them. But politics, particularly politicians, use differences to put us into group and play us against one another. That's where a lot of political power comes from. The old against the young, the poor against the rich, the whites, the blacks, and everyone is in politics seems to be suggesting that you need the government to protect you and to referee. And there's certainly some of that goes on in our country, David, but for the most part, if civil society is allowed to work with families and community groups, churches, and if it's decentralized, you'll see a lot less of this tribalism and much more community, and in the middle of that, a lot of individualism being very different in their own lives.
Senator, I'd love to get your thoughts on leaders in conservatism today. Besides yourself, let's take yourself out of it for a moment. And I want to summarize the 4 principles I took from your book of conservatism. It's submission to God, law, and authority, celebrate diversity, property rights as being critical, and also traditions as a quality control. If you look at those 4 principles, would you say that Donald Trump, our president, is a conservative leader? Because most people, I think, would at least pause before they said those all apply to him.
I don't think Donald Trump came to Washington as an ideological conservative. I doubt if he's read Russell Kirk, which we spend a lot of time in the book bringing forward. A lot of what his policy ideas are based on experience and common sense. And in the book, we point out that a lot of the ideas about things that work, if you give them time, are common sense ideas. So many of his policies have been very common sense based on his years of development experience, which translates a lot to the political sphere. But the conservative leaders I would see today, I mean, it's really hard to find them in the media. So I would have to go back into history. We bring a lot of those into the book. People like Russell Kirk and his book, The Conservative Mind, brought the writings of a lot of people who had looked at the world over many years, many decades, and several generations to point out these principles that you talk about, that we're all better off. Life is more meaningful if we understand these basic things that we can keep. And I think you just mentioned most of them in the first part of the book.
Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate your being here. It's a really genuinely thoughtful book that I enjoyed reading. It's Jim DeMint. He is former Republican senator from South Carolina and author of the new book, Conservative, Knowing What to Keep. Coming up here, how are we going to get all those packages over the holidays? Well, if UPS gets its way, we'll get some of them from temp employees driving their own cars. We take a look at what's coming along with Santa Claus this year. That's coming up next. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
We could call it Bloomberg Awesome, but Bloomberg Best is accurate and less embarrassing to say.
Analysts are raising questions about rising competition and higher costs.
June Grasso and Ed Baxter.
It is the first company to go public in the space tourism industry.
Bloomberg Best.
That was AutoNation CEO Cheryl Miller.
Weekday evenings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. UPS has announced that it won't be just brown vans that deliver those packages to our homes over the holidays. It will be using temporary drivers using their own vehicles as well, which has the Teamsters Union none too happy at the moment. To take us through it, we welcome now Bloomberg intelligence analyst Lee Klasko. He's joining us from Princeton, New Jersey. So take us through what this dispute is. As I understand it, UPS has a union. It's the Teamsters for their drivers, but they're going to be hiring some temps.
Yeah, I mean, they traditionally hire part-time workers during the peak season where volumes can increase about 50%. What's really different about this year is the peak season is condensed and you're also expecting volume growth. So they're actually going to have to deliver more packages in a shorter period of time. The peak season has been condensed from about 32 days last year to 26 days this year. And that's significantly going to put pressure on the network. And, UPS or FedEx, they don't build their network for peak season, just like you don't build a church for Easter Sunday. So they're going to have to flex up, and they use part-time workers for that. What's happening here now is that UPS is looking to have some of its part-time workers drive their own vehicles to deliver packages to people's homes. And not only, are they going to have to deal with the peak season, which is condensed, additional volumes, which could be around 5% this year for e-commerce. They also have the added volume that UPS kind of won as FedEx walked away from some Amazon ground business.
Well, and we know the Teamsters, the union for the UPS drivers, has actually filed a grievance on this. What about the alternatives to UPS? What about FedEx? What about Amazon? Do they have unions for the drivers?
No, they don't. And so, UPS is somewhat unique when it's related to its biggest competitor, FedEx, and I guess, Amazon to a lesser degree. And that really is kind of one of the challenges that they have to deal with. The good news is, historically, they've had a decent relationship with the Teamsters. There hasn't been a major strike in over 20 years. They averted one about 18 months ago. And the unions have been shown their ability to be more flexible. UPS is rolling out Sunday delivery next year. That was really kind of unheard of if we were talking about it 5 years ago. So, the employees and the union members at UPS kind of understand the challenges that the company faces in order to kind of increase their presence with the B2C e-commerce business, which is, really the growth area for the company. And it does come with lower margins.